Chapter 1481. Hiss. The three of them were sliced into pieces in midair. Fresh blood poured down from the sky like a waterfall. Dukyu let out a long howl, his body swayed continuously as he dodged at high speed. Suddenly, a sharp sword pierced towards his ribs from a strange angle. His entire body dodged slightly to the side, and that treasured sword seemed to have brushed past his muscles. Dukyu's palm had already sent the head of the owner of the treasured sword flying. A saber came slashing towards Dukyu's face. Dukyu tilted his body and sent a flying kick towards the person's crotch. Ouch! A tragic cry rang out. It didn't sound like a human's voice at all. That person screamed miserably as he flew over Dukyu's head with his blade. Dukyu stretched out his hand, and by the time that person flew over his head, he had already been sliced into two. Chapter 770, Dukyu's Wrath, 4th Update. Darling is very fierce. Everyone be careful. Miao Zhendong shouted loudly. When the word, baby, entered his ears, Dukyu became even more furious. Damn it, you are still talking about, baby, even at this point in time. Baby your grandpa. With a flash of sword light, the long sword that was clamped under his ribs flew out. With its piu sound, it pierced through the body of an expert. The remaining strength of the sword didn't diminish as it brought the body of the expert flying backwards, crashing into a tree. The long sword was nailed to the tree. This person was already dead. His body was hanging on the sword and slowly slid down. As it slid down, his body was sliced into two. Dukyu's body flashed again and again. Sometimes he was in the east, sometimes he was in the west. Sometimes he was in the front, and sometimes he was in the right. In the blink of an eye, he had already circled around the entire arena. Behind him, at least 30 supreme martial artist experts had their eyes bulging out. Dukyu wasn't completely unharmed. His body was also hit by 2 palms from one of the experts before he died. However, he didn't seem to have any reaction at all. It was as if he wasn't affected at all. It was only at this moment that the 2 consecrators who were leading the team turned pale with fright. They didn't expect this monster to be so fierce. With a whistle, everyone retreated. However, Dukyu wasn't willing to let them go just like that. Part 7. The Fury of Dukyu. Another 3 people turned into 3 clouds of blood mist in the process of retreating. Exactly half of the 80 experts were eliminated. There were 40 more. And all these changes happened in the short span of a few flicks of a finger. The ecstasy of discovering a human-shaped treasure in their hearts had yet to dissipate, but it had already turned into resentful spirits. No, it was more accurate to say that all the vengeful spirits were gone. Under the effect of Dukyu's elven aura, the souls of those experts who had just died tragically were decomposed by the invisible green energy in the air, and turned into pure heaven and earth energy. The souls of these insufferably arrogant supreme being experts had all turned into great nourishment for the trees in this place. Although the bloody massacre had begun, the surrounding trees and plants acted as cleaners, burying all the corpses and mangled flesh as they appeared. Even the bloodstains were cleaned up. The surrounding flowering trees and bushes that could bear flowers bloomed beautifully, and in an instant, the fragrance of the flowers filled the air, and the smell of blood disappeared. As far as the eye could see, it was a beautiful garden with a myriad of colors, birdsong, and the fragrance of flowers. Was this the battlefield that had just devoured 40 experts? However, such a beautiful place was actually the most terrifying and horrifying place of slaughter. Miao Zhendong no longer had the playful look from before, and his expression was extremely solemn as he stared at Dukyu. Even though so many people had already died, the passion in the hearts of the remaining people had not diminished at all. Instead, it had surged even higher. This was a human-shaped treasure. The more powerful the treasure, the more powerful its effects would be. If they were to consume it, then, their cultivation? Wouldn't it be like rubbing? What was there to be afraid of when people died? If they died, it would mean that they were not capable enough. The more people who died, the better. The fewer people there were, the more they would be able to get, right? As the saying goes, greed blinds one's mind. Until now, this group of people still hadn't seen the situation in front of them, and hadn't been able to clearly judge the terrifying strength in front of them. The 40 people formed a semicircle around Dukyu, and at the center of the encirclement was Dukyu's tall figure. "Sir, what kind of thing are you?" Miao Zhendong's eyes were filled with fervor, and his pupils shrunk. He secretly gathered his strength and asked, "What kind of treasure are you? Transforming into a human?" Facing such a powerful human-shaped treasure, Miao Zhendong no longer dared to treat it lightly. Even the tone of his voice had risen from treasure to ter. Dukyu was startled and said, "What? What did you say? What treasure? Transforming into a human? What are you talking about?" This group of people were very abnormal, and their strength was tyrannical. How could they speak so carelessly? I really don't know how they obtained their tyrannical cultivation. Miao Zhendong thought that the monster in front of him was putting on an act, and was trying to make him lower his guard. "So," he said indifferently, "although your figure and actions are no different from a human, how can you hide from this old man's discerning eyes? This old man has long seen that you are the incarnation of a monster. Tell me, what kind of thing are you?" Dukyu was tongue-tied and said angrily, "You're the monster. Your whole family is full of monsters. Always your grandpa. With those 2 dead fish eyes of yours, you still dare to call yourself discerning eyes? I think you're more like a chicken eye or a chicken eye." Miao Zhendong said calmly, "Your strength is not ordinary. Why do you have to lower yourself and hurt people with your words? However, it doesn't matter whether you admit it or not. Today's outcome has already been decided. I will definitely beat you back to your original form. Everyone, get ready." With a schwa sound, all the experts took a step forward in unison and assumed a battle stance. Dukyu suddenly felt very conflicted in his heart. What kind of person is this? How dare he say that I hurt people with my words? If I had said something that hurt people, how badly would you hurt me? Why do I look like a monster? How am I putting on an act? Could it be that these people are actually treating me as a spirit? Heavenly treasure. Treasure, I'm really fucking speechless. A bunch of idiots, just you wait. You old bastard on the other side. Open those chicken eyes of yours wide and look carefully. Is there a monster as handsome as me? Dukyu was furious. Ha! Miao Zhendong's gaze was like a deep pool, and he still looked calm. Monsters will never admit that they are monsters. I don't want to argue with you anymore. When I beat you back to your original form, everything will be clear. Dukyu was so angry that he almost vomited blood. This old bastard, just you wait. Let's see if I'll beat you up. There were still 2 8th-grade supreme martial artists, 3 7th-grade supreme martial artists, 7 9th-grade supreme martial artists, 10 5th-grade supreme martial artists, but only 3 4th-grade supreme martial artists and 5 3rd-grade supreme martial artists. The other 10 were all 2nd-grade supreme martial artists. Those that he had killed just now seemed to be a glorious result, reducing the enemy's head by half. However, most of them were 2nd and 3rd-grade supreme martial artists. The 2 strongest ones were only 4th-grade supreme martial artists. This wasn't much of a loss to the enemy's high-end combat strength. This was also the real reason why the enemy didn't panic in the face of such a shocking change, and even had the confidence to turn the situation around. It seemed that the following tough battle could be expected. If it weren't for the trump card of exchanging injury for injury, the situation wouldn't have been optimistic for him. In fact, in terms of pure strength, although Dukyu had already reached the peak of 8th-grade supreme martial artist, the other party had 2 8th-grade supreme martial artists and a 7th-grade supreme martial artist, and many other high-grade supreme martial artists as support. The encirclement had already been formed, and even if he wanted to escape, it would be a difficult matter. However, this was the home ground of the fairies. And Dukyu was a top-notch royal fairy. But for both sides, this was an unimaginable battle. Dukyu was innocent, and the enemy was also wrong due to a combination of factors. Dukyu sneered and slowly recited, "I am the king of the 8 barren lands, I am the king of the 10,000 rivers and mountains." His body floated in the air. Everyone go! Miao Zhendong's pupils shrank. Everyone, pay attention to your strength. Don't break it. If it breaks, the medicinal effect will be greatly reduced, and the loss will outweigh the gain. Everyone rushed forward. Yu let out a long howl and descended from the sky. He rushed into the crowd like a sharp arrow. Bang! After exchanging a palm strike with the second high priest, the second high priest's body retreated rapidly. He wanted to borrow the momentum of his retreat to dissipate this tyrannical impact. However, Yu, who was similarly impacted by the huge impact, did not retreat but instead advanced. Forcefully enduring the surging blood and qi in his chest, he let out a loud shout and grabbed out with both of his hands. The heads of the two second-grade supreme martial artists were grabbed by him at the same time, and with a bang, the two watermelons exploded, splattering red all over the ground. After succeeding in his attack, he still didn't retreat. He took a step forward and kicked out. The high priest didn't take the attack. His body flashed, and his palm came down like a knife. Yu retracted his leg and moved to the left side of the high priest like a ghost. He actually put his shoulder under the high priest's palm. At the same time, he punched the high priest's left chest. The great consecrator let out a muffled groan as he spat out a mouthful of blood. It happened to merge with the blood that Yu had spat out. The great consecrator Miao Zhendong hastily retreated, but how could Yu let him escape? Among so many people, the most disgusting and hateful one was this old pervert, this tortoise bastard. His whole body withstood the attacks from all directions, and he moved forward like lightning. His palms were like giant axes that could split mountains, and he continuously attacked Miao Zhendong's chest. Miao Zhendong's body flew close to the ground as he retreated, and he kept defending with his palms. He was shocked and angry at the same time. You don't want to live anymore. He couldn't be blamed for shouting like that. The other party's fighting style was obviously a suicidal fighting style. It was even a self-destructive attack. If he wasn't careful, he would die before he could kill Miao Zhendong. After all, the high priest was only taking on Yu's own attacks, and Yu himself had to take on countless attacks from all directions. Full of bullshit. If you want to kill me, will you let me live? If you don't take the opportunity to find a scapegoat, when will you? Yu smiled coldly. Old bastard, didn't you say that you want to eat my treasure? I'll give you a chance. Come and eat, you pervert. While he was talking, his hands still didn't relax. Suddenly, he roared, living beings of heaven and earth, be used by me. Come. Fourth update. 3320 update. There are still 4.5 hours left until 24 o'clock. Can my monthly votes reach 3,420? I continued to write. Chapter 1482. Following Yu's loud roar. The entire forest seemed to be shaking. Countless green streams of air swirled and surged towards the battlefield. Yu breathed out and inhaled. He fought crazily while using his body to resist the attacks. At the same time, he absorbed a huge amount of spirit energy to heal his injuries. He was injured at every moment, but he was also recovering at every moment. Bang bang bang, Miao Zhendong forcefully took a breath and received 17 palm attacks. Yu's qi and blood were already surging. Blood flowed out of his mouth. The surrounding Supreme's palm attacks were also landing on his body. However, he still didn't care. After a round of brute force, Miao Zhendong's last breath was completely exhausted, and he could no longer hold on. His face suddenly turned bright red, and he let out a miserable shriek. His entire right arm was broken, and he spat out a mouthful of blood that filled the sky. Part 777. A powerful monster. Fifth update. His entire body plowed a huge ditch on the ground as he flew out with a boom. Miao Zhendong's momentum came to a stop when his back hit a large tree with a bang. However, before Miao Zhendong could recover from his shock, the roots of the large tree automatically emerged from the ground and tightly wrapped around him along with the vines at the side. Miao Zhendong let out the loud roar. Something that looked like a burning flame was emitted from his body. The surrounding roots and vines were instantly turned into ashes. Yu originally planned to continue chasing and killing Miao Zhendong. However, he didn't expect the sound of wind behind him. Following that, he roared, "Evil creature! Damn it!" The second consecrator had finally arrived. This time, he went all out and didn't hold back anymore. If he held back any longer, he would probably end up in the same state as Miao Zhendong. After all, Duke Yu's tyrannical strength and his determination to fight with his life were too terrifying. Seeing the second consecrator's ferocious attack, Duke Yu didn't fight back. He somersaulted and escaped into the sky. He had already arrived on the trunk of a big tree. With a flash of green light, the tree branches grew densely and covered the entire sky above everyone's head. The second consecrator let out a loud roar and struck out with his palm. 100 feet tall demon. Fifth update. The sky instantly cleared up. However, Duke Yu was nowhere to be seen. Only a hoarse laughter could be heard. Wait for your death. Bastards. Everyone leaped onto the treetops at the same time. As far as the eye could see, that green-clothed figure was nowhere to be seen. A painful groan came from below. The source was none other than High Consecrator Miao Zhendong. He's too powerful. Miao Zhendong's old face scrunched up like a cigar. He said angrily, I didn't expect this treasure to be so fierce. Cough, cough, cough. As he coughed, he spat out several mouthfuls of blood. When he was fighting with Duke Yu, his initial intention of retreating was to neutralize the huge amount of energy that was generated from the conflict between the two of them. Without any surprises, it was the most logical, even a supreme being of the highest grade. After exchanging a blow with his full strength, he also needed to retreat to reduce his strength. Otherwise, he would have to use his own body to withstand the huge impact caused by the aftershock of the palm strike, which would most likely cause his internal organs to be shaken. This wasn't a joke. Although it wasn't easy for Supreme Being experts to get injured, and they could quickly recover from ordinary injuries, it wasn't easy for them to recover from injuries caused by experts of the same level. But he never thought that he would encounter such a monster today. One of them had reached the peak of the 8th level of the Supreme Martial Artist realm. He completely disregarded his own safety and raised his hand to risk his life. This was really a weirdo. Not only did he not retreat after exchanging a blow with the second High Consecrator, he also fought with him until both of them were injured. In fact, he was getting crazier and crazier. Swords and sabers fell like rain, and fists and palms flowed like water. None of the attacks were a joke, but he didn't care at all. He just aimed at himself and crazily smashed 20 palms. He smashed himself down from the sky and smashed himself into the ground. That wasn't the end. He kept smashing himself until he couldn't catch his breath. Miao Zhendong could guarantee with his life that this bastard's injuries were definitely more serious than his own. In fact, it was more than twice as serious. But he still did it. He did it without any hesitation. He did it without any scruples. And what made Miao Zhendong the most sullen was that he wasn't the only one who wanted to eat him. Do you have to be so relentless? Do you dare to risk your life a little more? Miao Zhendong became even angrier after he carefully examined his injuries. His internal organs were severely damaged, and almost all of them showed signs of displacement. His right arm was broken, and his entire arm was shattered. He was almost half crippled, and 3 of his ribs were broken. Even breathing could cause him severe pain. Until now, he still had an uncontrollable urge to vomit blood. What the fuck was going on? This is really, really beyond the norm of martial arts. There's actually such a monster. The High Consecrator felt very embarrassed. He didn't know how long it had been since he was last injured. High Consecrator, this is what I think. That thing has such an ability. It should be like that in the first place. Another mid-grade supreme martial artist said with a wry smile, after all, it's a different existence from us. It's a demon. That makes sense. Miao Zhendong felt slightly relieved. He forced himself to stand up from the ground. There was no point in saying anything else now. It was more important to heal his injuries as soon as possible. The second High Consecrator hurried forward and transferred his cultivation to help heal his injuries. Among those present, only the second High Consecrator had this ability. The help of the others was either a drop in the bucket or would only make things worse. With the departure of that demon, the environment here seemed to have returned to normal. Thinking of that inexplicable battle just now, more than half of the 80 people who came out of the house were actually lost. Everyone's hearts were somewhat heavy. Everyone, let's continue forward. Miao Zhendong recovered some of his energy. He waved his hand and said, "There's no need to be discouraged. This demon is already seriously injured. My injuries are already this bad, so his injuries are definitely more serious than mine. Most importantly, that fellow already hates us to the core. Such a strange creature that has taken human form is narrow-minded and vengeful. He will definitely not give up on revenge. His revenge is an opportunity that we can make use of. Therefore, everyone must be alert and pay attention to the movements around us. Since the opportunity has come, we must not let it slip through our fingers." High Consecrator is right. Everyone said in unison. So what if a few people died? You have to give up something to gain something. If you want to gain something, you have to give something. How could there be success without sacrifice? Moreover, that fellow was already seriously injured, even more seriously than the High Consecrator. The High Consecrator still had the second Consecrator to help him recuperate. That demon couldn't possibly find another of his kind to help him recuperate, right? Big brother, I feel a little uneasy in my heart. I keep feeling that there's something wrong with what happened today. The second Consecrator frowned. Is it really a demon? The High Consecrator turned his head. You have other opinions? What I mean is, although that person's battle style is unusually strong and very different from ordinary people, I keep feeling that it's still a person fighting with us and not a demon. The second Consecrator was somewhat worried. My feeling tells me that the enemy we've provoked this time is an extremely strong and troublesome enemy. Definitely not a demon. Haha. The High Consecrator laughed. Second brother, what do you think is the approximate level of this fellow's cultivation? 8th grade Supreme Martial Artist peak. He's definitely not weaker than you and me, but in terms of strength, he's not necessarily stronger than us. They're roughly on par. The second Consecrator didn't even think about it. Both of them had the same understanding on this point. Let me ask you again. Second brother, how many people do you think there are in the entire continent who have such a cultivation? The High Consecrator scoffed and said, "Those who have such a cultivation, which one of them isn't in our information? And which one of them is unknown to us? And the most important thing is, do you know that there was once such a person? For a person to cultivate to 8th grade Supreme Martial Artist, no matter what, he'd still need to roam the martial world and gain experience, right? Do you have any sense of familiarity with this fellow's information? His resume? Such a strange appearance and a hatred that's close to that of a wild beast? Has there ever been such a special kind of expert? No, I don't have any impression of him. There's not even one that's close to him." That's right. Then if he's really a human and not a demon, then did he fall from the sky? Or crawl out from the ground? The High Consecrator sneered. The second High Consecrator was speechless. Let's put aside his strange appearance and his almost disorganized fighting style. Have you noticed another very important thing? When he opens his hands, there's a patch of lush green. Wherever the greenery passes, the surrounding flowers and trees grow rapidly. Have you ever seen such a special ability? The High Consecrator snorted and said, "Even the entire forest can be used as an army by him to attack. What kind of person do you think would have such an ability?" At this point, the High Consecrator laughed. The second High Consecrator nodded and said, "Big brother's words make sense. I'm probably thinking too much." The High Consecrator chuckled and said, "Second brother, don't worry too much. Or perhaps you should think more about how much benefits we can get after we capture this treasure. Think about it carefully." Duke Yu, who was heavily injured, quickly escaped into the dense forest. In an instant he was more than a few hundred miles away in a patch of green waves. Only then did he feel at ease to check the injuries on his body. He grimaced in pain. "Motherfucker, I'm so aggrieved. I've never seen anything like this before. I've also never experienced such an inexplicable battle. Even until now, Duke Yu still didn't know what this group of perverts was doing. Which force did they belong to? Just like that, they fought until they were hovering between life and death. Looking at the injuries on his body, Duke Yu grimaced in pain. So ruthless. In that short battle just now, He was only focused on chasing after the perverted high consecrator. He didn't care about the attacks of the others at all. Now that he checked, it was really shocking. It was fortunate that he didn't lose his life just now. There were more than 300 palms, more than 100 kicks, 70 to 80 fingers, and more than 10 knives, 20 to 30 swords. He believed that the legendary 100 palms entanglement and 1,000 cuts to pieces were nothing more than this. Chapter 1483. Actually, Duke Yu didn't know that his injuries this time were due to the enemy's mercy. If it wasn't for the great consecrator's warning, "Everyone, pay attention to your strength and don't break it," his injuries would have been even more serious. Duke Yu didn't dare to be negligent. This wasn't a light injury. Even with the help of the spirit energy, it would still take some time to heal. He immediately sat cross-legged to heal his injuries. He gritted his teeth and thought, "You bastards, first you used words to tease me, then you said you wanted to eat me in front of me. You even treated me as a spirit. Fine, I'll show you perverts this time. If I can't kill you bastards and perverts, I'll tear off your dick and feed it to the dogs." This time, he used the power of the forest to heal his injuries, but the transmission channel came from underground. The strong enemy was here. Chapter 778. From being chased to being chased on the side, they were all people with extremely sharp divine senses. How would Duke Yu dare to rashly cross the sky to collect the spirit energy? However, the underground transmission was the same. The tide-like spirit energy was continuously transmitted into Duke Yu's body through the underground. At the same time, Duke Yu clearly felt that the aura of the City of Elves was rapidly emerging from an unknown depth underground and entering his body. Duke Yu only felt that his heavy injuries were rapidly healing. It was almost in an instant. This made Duke Yu's desire to find Chu Yang and restore the City of Elves even stronger. As the High Priest's injuries advanced and healed, he took some healing elixirs and had already recovered a lot. Other than his broken arm and ribs which still needed some time to heal, his internal injuries were basically no longer a problem. He also became more energetic. As for the expression on his face, it was no different from before. Along the way, a group of supreme martial artists led the way. There were also a dozen or so experts who simply stepped on the treetops to advance, afraid that they would miss any traces of the treasure. It didn't take long. They had already walked for 200 miles. The surroundings were silent, and this silence seemed to be able to last forever. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. It was filled with the fragrance of flowers and birds, as well as an aura unique to the forest. They almost didn't encounter any obstructions or disturbances. The only obstruction was the 70 to 80 poisonous snakes that they killed along the way. However, this little threat to a supreme martial artist was completely not worth mentioning. Could it be that the treasure is afraid? He has already escaped. One of the 5th grade supreme martial artists muttered. It can't be that smart. The other person was also a little surprised and doubtful. If their precious Gigi were to run away, then all of them would have lost everything. They would not have gained anything at all. Not only did he not gain anything, he even had to sacrifice the lives of dozens of supreme martial artists. At this moment, a blood-curdling scream suddenly rang out, and a very familiar green light flashed past. He was one of the 10 supreme martial artists who were exploring the way at the top of the tree. 2 people somersaulted and fell to the ground. Only the remaining few people could be heard shouting angrily. Then, the sound of an intense battle could be heard. The people under the tree naturally did not dare to be negligent. With a whoosh sound, they all rushed forward, only to discover that the intense battle had already ended. However, those 8 supreme martial artists still maintained their battle postures, but their enemies had already disappeared without a trace. The High Priest instructed a few 7th grade supreme martial artists to observe the surroundings to see if they could find any traces of the sneak attackers escaping. Then, they rushed to the place where the 2 sneak attackers had fallen. He focused his gaze and saw the 2 people on the ground. Blood was still gurgling out of their throats. They could not be any more dead. There were many tree roots and vines entwined around the 2 corpses, as if trying to pull the 2 corpses into the ground. The lower half of their bodies had already been dragged in quite a bit. Seeing this strange situation, everyone looked on helplessly. They tried to keep calm on the surface, but their hearts were already cold. What happened just now? Miao Zhendong asked loudly. Just now we were flying all the way, searching for traces of that spirit, but we didn't find anything. Suddenly, a person appeared out of nowhere in midair. His entire body was green. Because his appearance was too sudden, we were completely unprepared. Third brother Mu and fourth brother Che's throats were grabbed by that person, and then blood spurted out. We hurriedly went to help them, but that person immediately let go and ran away. He didn't say a word, and then mysteriously disappeared again. Although that person only appeared for a short time, we can still confirm that he is that treasure from before. That green body, I definitely won't be mistaken. The person with the highest cultivation in the previous group replied. The person who replied could still tell the whole story. As for the supreme martial artist beside him, he was obviously frightened. The two people who had just died were right next to him. They were the closest to him. He could even feel their desperate struggle at the last moment. In just a moment, two supreme being experts who had similar cultivation levels to him were finished just like that. If the other party's target was me, even with the cultivation of Mu Laosan and Che Laosan, they couldn't even put up any resistance and were finished just like that. Another person's face was pale. This demon is too scary, don't say any more. Everyone, don't worry about nothing and disturb the morale of the troops. Let's continue forward. Miao Zhendong's face was gloomy. Everyone was silent, because everyone could feel an extremely strong sense of danger rising spontaneously. If the other party came out to fight openly, they wouldn't be afraid. In fact, they would be more than happy to do so. However, the other party was obviously very smart. He only hid in the dark and launched a sneak attack. Once he succeeded, he didn't linger and disappeared in an instant. Everyone knew that this entire forest was the other party's home ground. The other party could appear and disappear unpredictably and hide in an instant. But what about them? This time, the ones who died were Mu Laosan and Che Laosan. Then who would be the next one? Would it be them? Everyone was silent for a moment and continued to move forward. Originally, they were inexplicably excited about the treasure hunting trip, but because of the huge accident just now, everyone felt insecure. Everyone walked carefully for a few miles. Suddenly, there was another sudden scream. The body of the person who was walking at the back exploded into a bloody mist. Everyone hurriedly turned back to check, but only saw a green figure flash and disappear. A sinister laugh reverberated in the air. "Come out, you demon!" Miao Zhendong shouted. "What kind of hero are you if you keep hiding? If you have the guts, come out and fight openly." A low, sinister laughter came from the green forest. "I'm not a hero. I'm a demon." Miao Zhendong heard it and cursed continuously. Everyone couldn't help but be speechless. "High priest, what kind of hero are you talking to a demon about?" Many people cursed silently. That demon was obviously a smart one. Was he stupid enough to rush out and fight a big group of supreme martial artists? What's more, he had already suffered once before. As long as he wasn't crazy, he wouldn't voluntarily come out and sacrifice himself, right? Right now, the enemy is in the open while we are in the dark. It's quite unfavorable for us. The only thing we can do now is to increase our speed and pass through this boundless forest as soon as possible. The second high priest frowned. Even if he wants to take revenge, he can only do it when we are still in the forest. Once we increase our speed, we will definitely mess up his plan. As long as we can leave this place, we don't have to worry about his plot. If he doesn't do anything, then after we pass through, we can call more experts the next time we come back. We don't have to worry about him escaping to the sky. The second high priest said, "Moreover, this demon is so strong. Even if others come, as long as they don't have a specific strategy, I believe they may not be able to subdue him. Therefore, big brother, you don't have to worry about him being taken away by others when you come back. Alright, we can use fire to attack and burn the whole forest. Let's see if he can grow faster or the fire can burn faster. Fire won't work. Once there is a fire here, I'm afraid we will be the first ones to fall into the sea of fire. It's hard for us to get out from such a far distance. Moreover, this demon moves very quickly. He can hide in this huge forest anytime. Fire won't be able to catch up to him. Since that's the case, we can only come back next time. That's true. Miao Zhendong muttered to himself for a moment and said, "It's decided then. When we come back next time, we will take this thing in one fell swoop." Everyone's spirits were lifted. Next, everyone became alert and quickened their pace. They cut through all obstacles and advanced bravely. However, no matter how fast they were, this forest covered an area of thousands of miles. How could they cross it in such a short period of time? Not to mention that everyone had deliberately slowed down their speed in order to search carefully. Their progress now was not even a quarter of the whole journey. As they advanced, another 3 people fell into the forest and became nutrients for the plants. Originally, there were only half of the 40 people left. Now, there were 12 people left. People kept getting killed. Everyone's faces became gloomier as they rushed forward at full speed. Every time Dukyu made a move, he would first choose the weakest and easiest to deal with. Every time he made a move, he would not miss. Once he succeeded, he would not stop. He was like a ghost wandering in the human world. Moreover, this was in the dark of the night. Home ground. Absolute home ground. He could even appear from any tree to carry out an attack. He could suddenly appear from any bush. Every time he appeared, one person would disappear from the world forever. As the number of people continued to decrease, the fear of unknown attacks in everyone's hearts grew stronger and stronger. The initial excitement of seeing a human-shaped treasure had long flown away. 28 people left. Dukyu was still wandering freely in the forest. Not far away, he looked at the group of people who were rushing forward, intending to leave the forest. He calculated silently in his heart. Since he made a move again, he had already killed 12 people. Such a result made Dukyu feel that he was a fool for choosing to fight the enemy head-on just now. However, low-level Supreme Beings were basically extinct now, and the remaining ones were all high-level Supreme Beings. Each one of them was stronger than the last. If he wanted to kill them silently like he did before, it would undoubtedly be much more difficult for him to escape unscathed after landing a blow. Dukyu's eyes shot out a green light in the dark forest. He was carefully considering his next strategy. Chapter 1484. At this moment, everyone's hearts were sullen and depressed to the point of madness. There was also an indescribable sense of fear. A mid-grade supreme martial artist actually needed someone to protect him just for a breath of air. He needed 2 8th-grade supreme martial artists and 2 8th-grade supreme martial artists to protect him. Even so, he wasn't completely safe. How ridiculous was this? Would anyone believe it if he told them? But at this moment, the 4 people below had already scouted out the terrain. Just as the 4 above were about to descend, another mishap befell him. A strange, almost illusory figure shot out from the forest below like a bolt of lightning. With only a swoosh sound, it crossed the sky and crashed into the group of 4 second-grade supreme martial artists like a meteor. The second high priest roared. Part 7, Chapter 780. The breakthrough of a mid-grade supreme martial artist. Be careful. Before he could finish his sentence, there was a muffled bang. Dukyu's resolute palm, which contained all of his cultivation, had already landed accurately on the dantian of a mid-grade supreme martial artist. The other 3 immediately counterattacked, drawing their swords and sabers at the same time. Their counterattacks were as swift as lightning. Dukyu let out a long laugh and actually didn't dodge or evade. He took on the 3 terrifying attacks head-on, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Then he forcefully grabbed the shoulder of another mid-grade supreme martial artist, while his other hand slapped cleanly on the top of this person's head. Then he abruptly raised his knee and hit this person's dantian. But there was a very crisp sound. This mid-grade supreme martial artist's head first shattered. Then his dantian exploded, turning into minced meat at the same time as the previous mid-grade supreme martial artist, flying in all directions. The second high priest's sword came attacking with the sound of wind and thunder. His attack was extremely fast and violent. Duke Yu didn't receive the attack. He quickly retreated. However, there was a shining sword on his thigh and lower abdomen. There were 2 swords and 4 holes in his body. He flew down with blood dripping from his body. Behind him, there was still a sword light like lightning. Just as the sword light touched his back, he turned into a ball of green light again and completely disappeared in the vast forest. The second high priest's expression changed. Part 7, Chapter 780, The Breakthrough of a Mid-Grade Supreme Martial Artist. He stood there with a pale face. Facing such an unexpected situation, he had an urge to curse. The other party was too cunning and too cruel. He did not hesitate to exchange injuries for injuries. He would rather be heavily injured to kill the enemy. What a ruthless person. Everyone, let's go. Chief Consecrator Miao Zhendong's spirit was somewhat dispirited, and his eyes were already somewhat dull. Along the way, another 2 middle-grade supreme martial artists fell one after another. Then, even the 7th-grade supreme martial artists finally started to become Duke Yu's hunting target. Once all the low-grade supreme martial artists were dead, it would naturally be the turn of the 7th-grade supreme martial artists. During this process, the High Consecrator and his entourage also confirmed a terrifying fact. It caused their last bit of stubbornness to completely vanish. This discovery was not a big deal. It was just that they realized that no matter how serious the injuries were, this spirit could quickly recover. When it appeared in front of them again, it would definitely be full of spirit and vitality. That was all. His injuries were worsening all the way, while the other party kept on recovering. He was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. With such unequal conditions and a negative environment, it would be strange if he still had confidence. The High Consecrator was the last to arrive. There was only one word: escape. If you could escape, you were lucky. If you couldn't, you were unlucky. That was all. It was evening. Seeing a cloud of smoke finally appearing in front of them, both the High Consecrator and the Second Consecrator had tears streaming down their faces. The heavens had pity on them. This journey to hell, to the death of the gods, had finally come to an end. We are finally going to get out of this damned forest. This period of running for our lives is really unbearable to look back on. Just thinking about it made them scared. It was an eternal nightmare. Looking at each other who was all alone, both of them had tears in their eyes. The joy of being reborn after so many years, they had long forgotten what tears were. At this moment, they could not hold back their tears. 80 people came out, and now only the 2 of us are left. Even the 3 7th-grade supreme martial artists were all dead now. The other party's viciousness caused the 2 of them who'd experienced many battles to tremble with fear, and just thinking about it caused them to feel a wave of terror. Who would have imagined that what seemed to be a peerless fortune that descended from the heavens was actually a peerless calamity? Speaking of this part of the journey, the most frightening part was the last 1,500 miles. When the human-shaped demon killed the last 2 7th-grade supreme martial artists, the 2 High Consecrators did not dare to help at all. It was not that the 2 High Consecrators did not want to help, but it was meaningless. The human-shaped demon was too vicious, completely disregarding its own safety and fighting with its life. But it had the ability to do so. Not to mention 1 8th-grade supreme martial artist, even 3 or 4 of them would have died. But it only needed to hide for a while and immediately recover to its peak state. How could they fight such a battle? It was better to let the demons suffer the counterattacks of the 2 7th-grade supreme martial artists before their deaths. The more severe its injuries, the longer it could hide and recover, giving them more time to escape from this ghost town. For the next 1,500 miles, the 2 High Consecrators were on tenterhooks, suspecting that everywhere they looked could be an ambush set by the demon. They perfectly acted out what it meant to be jittery at the slightest sound. But until they escaped from the vast forest, they still did not encounter any attacks. This result made both of them anxious and doubtful. Could it be that the other party actually gave up at such a time? Or was it that the counterattacks of the 2 7th-grade supreme martial artists before their deaths caused too much damage to him and he could not recover in time? But no matter what, it was fortunate that they were able to escape, no matter what. At the last moment, the two of them actually used a secret technique, risking a huge loss of cultivation, and almost disregarding their lives, escaped out of the dense forest in the northwest direction. They only hated that their parents did not give birth to them with 2 more legs. "Mom, I won't be greedy next time." "Bah, there won't be a next time, there definitely won't be a next time." It was not that Yu really did not want to continue the chase, but after he fought hard and killed the last 2 7th-grade supreme martial artists, although he was also seriously injured, his injuries were still within the range of being able to recover quickly. He had absolute confidence that he could recover in a short period of time and continue the hunt. But at that moment, something happened. Yu inexplicably felt some kind of mysterious feeling. This feeling was very familiar, yet also very strange and distant. It was the feeling of breaking through. Yu really gritted his teeth. "I was about to break through just now, but was interrupted by a group of perverts, and was even treated as a demon by that group of perverts, which almost angered me to death. It was not easy to kill this group of perverts and bastards. Just as I was happily killing them, I suddenly had a breakthrough. What is this called? You left when you shouldn't have left, and you came when you shouldn't have come. What do you want me to do? What do I do? What do I do? Do I do it according to the highest standards? Serve him diligently." Although he was angry, Yu still did not dare to have the slightest bit of neglect. Since the opportunity to break through came again, it was better to do it honestly. As for the remaining 2 8th-grade supreme martial artists, he would let them go first. At most, he would find them after he broke through. Anyway, today's hatred could only be washed away with their blood. Previously, he heard from their conversation that they were going to the northwest to deal with the Calamity Sword Master. When the time came, he would directly go to the northwest to settle the score with them after he broke through. Yu's temper had always been like this. To those who offended him, even if they were thousands of miles away to the ends of the earth, he would definitely teach them a lesson. As for those who he wanted to kill, he had never let any of them go. How could Yu let the 2 consecrators who escape so easily? You can escape for a while, but do you have the ability to escape for a lifetime? This was definitely not a casual remark. Besides, I originally planned to go to Jianghu for help immediately after I broke through to 8th-grade supreme martial artist. But if I took the initiative to go to him, that guy would definitely ask me for help. Now that I have such a legitimate reason to go, I will be doing him a great favor. Those are 2 peak 8th-grade supreme martial artists experts. I helped him and even took revenge. When the time comes, I won't have to be embarrassed when I ask him for help. It's a good thing to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Yu's heart was full of calculations. One day later, the 2 great consecrators had already fled thousands of miles away from the boundless forest. They were rushing towards the rendezvous point with all their might. Suddenly, they felt the earth tremble. Then, an earth-shattering pressure came from behind them. The distance was already very far, and this feeling was also very faint. But the higher the level of the supreme martial artist, the more obvious this feeling was. At this moment, an 8th-grade supreme martial artist actually appeared. The 2 of them looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes at the same time. They both exclaimed. Only when an 8th-grade supreme martial artist had just broken through would there be such a scale of power. Speaking of breaking through to the supreme martial artist level, it was also the biggest wish of these 2 since they reached the peak of 8th-grade supreme martial artist 1,500 years ago. At this moment, someone had broken through, but it wasn't them. At this moment, the 2 of them felt really strange. It was almost indescribable with words. Who exactly broke through? The 2 of them leaped into the sky at the same time and looked back. The most likely location of the breakthrough is directly in the boundless mountain forest. The 2 of them looked at each other and saw the cold sweat on each other's forehead. Could it be that it was that monster who broke through? Miao Zhendong's face was ashen. Most likely. I was still wondering why he didn't chase after us in the last 1,000 miles. So it turns out that he didn't give up, but that he was suddenly facing a breakthrough. The 2nd great master swallowed a mouthful of saliva. If he really succeeded in breaking through, wouldn't the two of us have provoked a great enemy that we can't match? Miao Zhendong's old face was distorted. Damn it, did he have to be so deceitful? He chased after us all the way for fun, and when we're done for, he even made a breakthrough. Isn't this asking us to live in a nightmare for the rest of our lives? I even suspect that he broke through because of the battle with us. After so many battles of life and death, he has been on the verge of death several times. It's not strange for him to break through at the same time as us. Chapter 1485. Although the two of them were lucky enough to escape unscathed, they had been constantly flying in the air during their escape. At the last part of the journey, they had even used a secret technique to speed up their escape. The amount of energy they had consumed was even greater than the amount they had used in the previous battles. It was extremely difficult to recover. Not to mention that their state of mind was slightly damaged after so many incidents. It was too difficult for them to break through their original bottleneck and reach the peak of supreme martial artist level. Miao Zhendong was dumbfounded. He wanted to cry but had no tears. At first, when they discovered the abnormality, they thought that there was a treasure at their doorstep and went to hunt for it excitedly. But in the end, they were completely wiped out. The two of them were also fleeing like stray dogs. It turned out that this was not the worst result. Damn it, the worst was yet to come. The enemy was actually using the battle experience to hunt them. Chapter 781. Brothers, let's have a drink before the battle of life and death. Fourth update. He had broken through to the supreme martial artist level. Could there be anything more fucked up and devastating than this? If Duke Yu knew how the two of them were feeling, he would definitely spit out a mouthful of saliva. If it wasn't for you bunch of perverts, he would have broken through to the supreme martial artist level long ago. Also, if it wasn't for this sudden breakthrough, do you think the two of you would be able to escape unscathed? Humans should learn to be grateful. Let's hurry up and leave. He has just broken through and I think he still needs to stabilize his realm. But this process might not be very long. It will take at most a day. The second priest said, from my observation of this demon, he is extremely vengeful. Once he has broken through, he will definitely find trouble with us. Let's send a message to the others and ask them to rush over to help. We don't need to take a detour anymore. Rushing to the northwest is the right thing to do. The faster, the better. There are many experts there. As long as we reach there, we will be really safe. You're absolutely right. Let's go, let's go. Miao Zhendong nodded. When that time comes, if this treasure is really there, let's gather everyone's strength to kill him. I don't believe that he will leave the 7th Division. Brothers, let's have a drink before the battle of life and death. Fourth update. This strange forest is so sharp. My dear brother, you are my dear brother, please have mercy on me. Don't even think about killing him. He has already tasted it. The second high priest was speechless for a while. Quickly shield your divine sense and leave. The two of them sped up and disappeared without a trace with a whoosh sound. Another day and a half passed. Outside the boundless mountain forest, a whoosh sound was heard. A handsome figure came out. He was dressed in green, and his face was calm and gentle. He was tall and slender, and naturally had a kind of elegant elegance. The person who came was Duke Yu. After determining the direction, he directly set off. His direction was very fixed and very simple, northwest. I'm here. I don't know if you still remember the agreement we made in the 3 heavens. That is, the greatest hope of my elven race. His biggest wish. Our supreme, peerless expert, Duke Yu, is here. Yi family. Yi Qinshan was sitting cross-legged in the hall with his eyes closed, meditating quietly. Suddenly, someone hurried over to report. Elder Master, eldest young master suddenly went missing. When I went to deliver food to him just now, I discovered that the door to his room was wide open. I don't know where he went. Yi Qinshan sighed. Don't bother about him. Look after the family. After the servant left, Yi Qinshan slowly opened his eyes. The look in his eyes was extremely complicated. How could he not know about Yi Zue's departure? All of Yi Zue's movements were covered by his divine sense. Yi Qinshan didn't stop Yizue when he desperately broke through the restriction and escaped last night. I hope that you can find your own way and come back alive. If you really can't find it, then don't come back. Even if you come back, I will personally destroy you. Shao Clan's Shao Qinyu's reinforcement team. Currently, they had already passed through the land where winter and summer alternated and entered the Northwest Territory. They were still advancing slowly, and at most, they walked less than 700 miles in a day. This speed was naturally several times faster than ordinary people. But compared to these people's own strength, it was so slow that it was practically like an old cow climbing a hill. From the southeast all the way here, it actually took them 2 months and 10 days to walk. But they had finally arrived. They had already entered the Northwest, the land of ice and snow. Shao Qinyu just sat in the carriage and didn't move at all throughout the journey. Other than drinking some water occasionally, he didn't even eat. He was silent throughout the journey, as if he was deliberating and scheming about something. But ultimately, he had a lot on his mind throughout the journey, causing the entire team to be extremely depressed. In short, the atmosphere was as gloomy as it could be. Stop! Shao Qinyu looked at the snowy ground in front of him and instructed calmly. Then, he waved his sleeves and the accumulated snow on the ground flew up without warning, revealing the ground below. The members of the Shao clan were shocked to discover that it wasn't an ordinary ground beneath them. Instead, it was a patch of dried blood, and there were even some pieces of flesh and blood from a corpse. A human head with dried flesh and blood rolled on the ground, facing the sky. Cold winds howled and the Northwest was a land of ice and snow. Yet, it had preserved the bloodstains of decay and the cruelty of war very well. This is already the boundary of the battlefield. Shao Qinyu looked at the human head on the ground silently and said calmly, "The Allied forces actually didn't clean up and bury the corpses. Is this wind and snow so useful?" Everyone was silent for a moment, feeling desolate. They were also going to participate in this battle. Would the final outcome be the same? Shao Qinyu suddenly exuded an inexplicable aura. A peak-grade supreme martial artist aura suddenly rushed into the sky and spread rapidly toward the northwest. After a long time, he closed his eyes tiredly and said, "Continue forward. The target is 1,500 miles ahead. Set up camp. Advance at the fastest speed." That night, it was still snowing heavily. Since the start of the war, the heavy snow in the northwest had never stopped. Shao Qinyu sat in the tent and waited quietly. He seemed to be waiting for something. He waited very peacefully and steadily. The next moment, he suddenly felt something. The tent door fluttered without wind, and Shao Qinyu stood quietly in the snow. That pair of eyes that had seen through the affairs of the world looked indifferently toward the northwest. In the wind and snow, a voice said with some difficulty, "Is it second brother Shao?" Shao Qinyu said calmly, "Yes. Second in the big clan, a Shao of the Immensity Sea southeast." The person sighed softly. Then, the wind and snow in the sky parted abruptly, and a white figure suddenly appeared in midair. A person with a head full of white hair and a body that was tall and straight like a sword suddenly appeared. It was just that his eyes were filled with helplessness, tiredness, and sadness. I really didn't expect second brother Shao to come personally. To be honest, I also didn't expect that I would personally make this trip. Shao Qinyu sized up the other party and sighed. "Chunbua, these years. You have also aged." That person was Li Chunbua. He looked at Shao Qinyu with a complicated expression and said, "Second brother Shao, can I have a word with you?" At this moment, the people from the Shao clan had already come out of their tents. All of them looked at Li Chunbua as if they were facing a great enemy. Shao Qinyu said indifferently, "All of you can leave. I want to have a word with my brother." "Elder Master, you must be careful. After all, we are enemies now." Before one of them could finish, he was stopped by Shao Qinyu's sharp gaze. Shao Qinyu said word by word, "Since when do I need your permission for my decisions?" That person was immediately drenched in sweat and knelt on the ground. "Elder Master, I was speaking nonsense." After a cold snort, the 2 middle-grade supreme martial artists had already disappeared at the same time. as if they had never appeared at all. In the wind and snow, a pot of wine was slightly hot. 2 wine cups were separated on the left and right, facing each other. A table made completely of ice and snow was quietly placed in the pure white snow. Second brother Xiao. The last time we drank together was about 4,000 years ago, right? Li Chuanbo looked at the stone table and said with a sense of melancholy. That's right. Your memory is still so good. The last time, it was me who brought the wine and you went hunting. Your barbecue skills are really not bad. Xiao Qinyu's hands were behind his back. When his hawk-like sharp eyes saw this stone table and the 2 cups of hot wine, a sense of melancholy rose in them. Second brother, please take a seat. I'll go and hunt a few prey. This time, since second brother has come to the northwest, I should naturally do this. Li Chunbo cupped his hands and turned around. I like to eat snow chicken drumsticks. Seeing Li Chunbo turn around, Xiao Qinyu added lightly. Good. Second brother will definitely be satisfied. Li Chunbo replied calmly. Then, with a flash, he had already disappeared in the wind and snow. After watching Li Chunbo disappear for a long time, Xiao Qinyu then slowly, very slowly, let out a long, long sigh. After Li Chunbo left Xiao Qinyu's line of sight for a long, long time, he finally let out a long, long sigh. He sighed softly. After a full hour, Li Chunbo finally came back with a big bundle of snow chicken drumsticks and a mountain of dry firewood. At this moment, he no longer had the demeanor of a middle-grade supreme martial artist. Instead, he was just like a woodcutter in the mountains who was busy making a living. He was carrying dry firewood that far exceeded the weight he carried on his back. Xiao Qinyu was still standing with his hands behind his back. His expression was as calm as before, but his heart was surging up and down like an overflowing sea. His emotions at this moment were so complicated that even his mouth tasted bitter. With Li Chunbo's cultivation, if it was just to hunt some ordinary snow chickens, how would it take him such a long time? However, just a stomp of his foot could kill tens of thousands of them. As for dry firewood, it was just a matter of waving his hand and the dry firewood would automatically fall into his hands. However, it took him a full hour to prepare all these things. Then, what exactly was he doing during this period of time? Was he feeling the same as himself, surging with emotions? With a crash, Li Chunbo placed the dry firewood on the ground. Then, with a shake of his hand, a large number of basins and jars appeared out of thin air. They were all seasonings for barbecue. Second brother, please wait a moment. I'll start now. Later, I'll let second brother try my culinary skills and see if they have deteriorated. Li Chunbo said as he busied himself. A dignified supreme martial artist, a peerless expert, was actually meticulous in his cooking. However, the vital points on his back were completely exposed to Xiao Qinyu just like that. He was completely defenseless against it. At this moment, if Xiao Qinyu had the intention to harm him, he only needed one palm strike to consign Li Chunbo to eternal damnation. Chapter 1486. In front of Xiao Qinyu, Li Chunbo was completely exposed. He did so without the slightest bit of precaution. He did it very naturally, without the slightest bit of reluctance. It was as if everything was supposed to be like this. Under such circumstances, even if the other party was not a Rain-grade supreme martial artist like Li Chunbo, an 8th-grade supreme martial artist, or even a 7th-grade supreme martial artist would be enough to take Li Chunbo's life with one strike. How many times in his life would someone as strong as Li Chunbo be so defenseless? Could it be that he didn't know that the current Xiao Qinyu was no longer on the same path as him? Xiao Qinyu's sharp eyes kept watching him busy. His gaze became deeper and deeper. In the end, it was inexplicably covered by a thin layer of mist. He seemed to sigh softly, and a few ripples finally appeared on his calm face. Chapter 782. One can warm the wine when cold, but how to warm the heart when cold? Yu Wenyue smiled and said, let's do it together. It's faster this way. I haven't done this for a long time. Don't forget how to do it. As he said that, he squatted down and started to fiddle with the dry wood. 2 mid-grade supreme martial artists, 2 of the top tyrants of the generation, just like that, One plucked the feathers from the chicken leg and the other got the dry wood, then mixed the seasoning and started the fire. Throughout the whole process, they didn't use any of their cultivation at all. They just swayed back and forth in front of each other's eyes. If either of them were to make a move at this time, they would have absolute confidence in killing the other. There was no difficulty or risk at all. However, the two of them were busy from beginning to end, as if they couldn't care about anything else at all. They threw themselves wholeheartedly into the big project of barbecuing, and their expressions were very solemn and dignified. When the fire finally rose into the sky, these two tyrants ended up with smoke all over their bodies. There were inevitably a few more stains on their usually dignified faces. They looked at each other and laughed at the same time. Then, the two of them didn't care about their image at all. They directly sat down in the snow and gently fiddled with the fire in front of them. Shoulder to shoulder, the two of them were very focused and didn't say a word. Chapter 782. One can warm the wine when cold, but how to warm the heart when cold? They were fully focused on turning the chicken leg, sprinkling seasoning, occasionally stirring the fire and putting some dry wood. Just like back then. Thousands or tens of thousands of years ago, there were two teenagers who were in the same situation as they were now. They were barbecuing themselves in a sorry state. Perhaps it was because they were careless, or perhaps it was because the other party was playing tricks on them. They smeared their faces and bodies like dirty little kittens. However, their hearts were filled with happiness. They had no grudges and were carefree and happy. Everything was silent except for the sound of snowflakes falling from the sky. There was also the crackling sound of dry wood burning. Waves of fragrance wafted in the air. The snowy chicken drumstick was already half-cooked. The two of them seemed to be really good at barbecuing. The two of them, who were focused on roasting the meat, still did not speak. They seemed to be very patient, and also seemed to be enjoying the process as they continued to work hard. After a long time, a voice broke the silence. "Second brother, do you remember that you were the one who taught me how to barbecue? That year, you were 15 and I was 13. Xiao Qinyu's usually deep and clear eyes actually showed a trace of mistiness. He subconsciously laughed mischievously. Yes, at that time, our parents' generation were all missing. The two of us who lost our fathers at the same time got together for a period of time. At that time, it was really good. We were like brothers to each other." There was the warmth of reminiscence in Li Chuanhua's eyes. Who would make others so anxious before they knew it? I still remember when I was being hunted down by that human butcher with 1,000 hands, but second brother, you brought people to save me. The brothers fought together. At that time, Big Brother hadn't gone missing yet, right? Yes? Big Brother hadn't gone missing yet? Xiao Qinyu echoed almost subconsciously. Suddenly he asked, "You're talking about," Li Chuanhua said softly, "I'm talking about Big Brother. The real Big Brother is not Yi Chunchen." There was reminiscence in Xiao Qinyu's eyes. If Big Brother was still around, I believe that our big family would definitely not have reached this stage today. But Big Brother's whole family went missing for no reason, Li Chuanhua chuckled. It's rare for brothers to gather together. Why bring up those troublesome things? I should be punished, second brother. Xiao Qinyu laughed. It's indeed second brother's fault. I'll punish myself with 1 cup later. If 1 cup isn't enough, I'll punish myself with 3 cups. Li Chuanhua chuckled. There's enough wine today. Second brother doesn't need to take the opportunity to cheat us to drink. Xiao Qinyu rolled his eyes. You little. Is your second brother that kind of person? Li Chuanhua smiled cheekily and said, Of course second brother isn't that kind of person. You've always just done and not said. The two of them chattered endlessly and started to talk about some of the interesting things that happened when they were young, or exposed each other's shortcomings. They laughed loudly from time to time. You patted my shoulder with your dirty hand, and I ruffled your hair. Both of them were monster-level old men who were more than 10,000 years old. At this moment, they were laughing as innocently as babies. They were so happy that they were like 2 innocent children. It was just that happiness, even if they laughed for a while and laughed for a long time, was ultimately not the only happiness in life. No matter how many interesting things there were, there would always be a moment when they were done talking. Finally, I seem to have forgotten when it started. We all started to go into seclusion and started to work hard. Improving our cultivation became the most important goal in our eyes. Li Chuanbo chuckled. When we completed one goal and came out, we realized that the clan had already become a huge entity. Our initial goal was no longer enough, so we continued to go into seclusion and continue to improve. I really don't know how many times we went into seclusion. When we came out of seclusion, all of us brothers missed each other. Yi Qinshan personally sent a letter to invite all of us brothers for a gathering. I still firmly believe that that gathering didn't have any utilitarian motives. Second brother, do you believe that? Xiao Chenyu sighed. I do. I also believe it. But when we got there, we realized that all of us had changed. All of us had become very scheming and shrewd. Some of the jokes that we were used to and had become natural could no longer be made. Therefore, our interactions with each other became less and less because none of us knew how to speak to our brothers anymore. Should we use diplomatic language? Then we might as well not say anything. But that time, we were still dead drunk and went our separate ways happily. Everything was revealed without saying anything. It was also a happy thing, said Li Chuanbo softly. And during the second gathering, there seemed to be more interactions, but no one dared to get drunk anymore. That time was at my house. Xiao Chenyu shook his head and sighed softly. The third gathering. I remember that Lan Buhui and Chen Yingfeng got into a fight. That time was at the Ling clan. They beat the Ling clan into a pulp. In a fit of anger, Ling Muyang chased the two of them out. Everyone parted on bad terms. That was probably the last gathering of all of us brothers. Li Chuanbo was rather taken aback. He said, yes, ever since then, we haven't gathered all of our brothers together. And now Lan Buhui is actually already dead. Xiao Chenyu sighed softly. We can't gather anymore. Li Chuanbo looked up at the sky and sighed. Yes, we can't gather anymore. There won't be any more opportunities for us brothers to gather together. The two of them stopped what they were doing at the same time. Their eyes were fixed on the flying snow in the sky, lost in thought. I don't know when it started. Our clans started scheming against each other. Originally, that was something that was very hard to imagine. In fact, I didn't even believe that such a day would come. That day. Li Chuanbo frowned rather sadly. When exactly did it start? Second brother, do you still remember? Xiao Chenyu patted him on the shoulder. How can I not remember? It was that time 8,400 years ago? That time, Yi Qinshan let you down. I know everything about that matter from beginning to end. I didn't care. Li Chuanbo broke into a smile and said, Second brother, you remembered wrongly. It wasn't 8,400 years ago. It was 8,530 years ago on the 5th day of the 10th month. Second brother, that day was my birthday. Xiao Chenyu was silent for a while. Then he used his hand to fiddle with the drumstick and said dispassionately, The drumstick isn't done yet. Let's not talk about those things of the past. Li Chuanbo chuckled and said, Since it's something of the past, there's no harm in talking about it. It was from that time, from that day onwards, that everyone suddenly realized that one could also scheme against each other and bully each other. If Li Chuanbo could tolerate it, then who else could? Who else could I bully? And so, chaos finally appeared. Xiao Chenyu said again, Don't talk about it. I said don't talk about it. Li Chuanbo smiled. Second brother and Yi Qinshan are good friends. If you don't want me to talk about it, then I won't talk about it. Then he chuckled and said, The drumstick is done. It's finally done. I can finally taste second brother's culinary skills again. I was still doubting whether there would be such a day. Xiao Chenyu raised his face and tilted his head up fiercely. He opened his mouth wide and faced the sky to welcome the falling snowflakes. His eyes, however, were tightly shut. His face was still as calm as the sea. His throat was bulging so clearly, like a chicken waiting to be slaughtered. It was as if anyone would be able to cut it with a knife. Li Chuanbo looked at his throat and smiled. Second brother, you're still my second brother. This will never change. Xiao Chenyu's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva. His smile was somewhat miserable. Aren't you my brother too? Will it change? The spicy, fragrant, and crispy roasted snow drumstick was placed on the table, giving off a rich fragrance. However, the wine that was still warm just now had already turned cold. In fact, it had even condensed into one in the wine cup. Xiao Chenyu was a little stunned. He said, "The wine has turned cold. Let me warm it up." Li Chuanbo shook his head somewhat sadly. He said, "The wine can still be warmed when it turns cold, but can the heart still be warmed when it turns cold?" Xiao Chenyu was taken aback. He said subconsciously, "No." Li Chuanbo smiled as if he didn't want to talk about this topic anymore. He said evenly, "Since we're in the northwest, let me warm the wine." He reached out and held both cups of wine in his palms. His hands actually trembled a little as he said, "It's really cold." Would a low-grade supreme martial artist care about a piece of ice? How cold could it be if it was really cold? However, Xiao Chenyu continued in a deep voice, "It's really cold." Chapter 1487. Heat gradually rose from Li Chuanbo's palms. The wine gradually dissolved and became as clear as jade again. The wine has been warmed. It's a pity that after the wine has dissolved, the taste of the wine has disappeared, Li Chuanbo said softly as he stared at the wine in his palms. Xiao Chenyu was silent for a moment before he said, "Since the taste of the wine is gone, we can't drink to our heart's content. Let's change it." "But if we change it, it won't be the original 2 cups anymore," Li Chuanbo said somewhat sadly. "Wine is still wine. It can still intoxicate people." Xiao Chenyu said softly. Both of them heaved a long sigh. The wine had been changed. Their spirits were also lifted. Even if they forced a smile, this was also the last time they would be together in this life. "Second brother, please." "Chunbo, please." "The first time we drank wine 10,000 years ago. At that time, we were in high spirits and gave pointers to the world. What a joy it was. 1,000 years ago, we drank wine many times. At that time, the world was already settled. We were satisfied and carefree. 8,000 years ago, we drank wine, but there were already many sighs. Time passed just like that. It's hard to turn back time. 4,000 years ago, we drank wine. We were still brothers. What couldn't we say, never said. Only you and me." At this point, both of them fell into silence at the same time. It was an indescribable silence. The next moment, both of them raised their heads and drank ferociously. After 3 pots of wine went down their stomachs, Li Chuanbo laughed loudly. With a wave of his hand, the 3 pots of wine flew far away. However, there were more than 10 pots of unopened fine wine on the table. Li Chuanbo took a pot and slapped the clay seal with his palm. He smiled and said, "A pot of turbid wine consumes the remaining joy. Farewell today, don't be in a dilemma." Xiao Chenyu's eyes were hazy. He grabbed a pot of wine and recited, "Life and death, victory and defeat, we are all brothers. Cold in the heart of heaven." Just as he finished, both of them suddenly froze at the same time. An indescribable emotion rose silently. In that instant, their hearts actually ached. This was a wine writ. It was written by Ling Muyang when they drank together before the brothers established a big clan. This was the last 4 lines. At that time, all the brothers said that this wine writ was really well done, and it was passed down. But the words, "life and death, victory and defeat, we are all brothers," were true. And now, when it came to Xiao Chenyu and Li Chuanbo, life and death, victory and defeat, the words were still the same. But it had its own implications. However, they were poles apart from each other, poles apart. A pot of turbid wine was enough to satisfy the remaining joys. Indeed, all the joys of the brothers for the rest of their lives were in a pot of wine today. After today, there would be no more. For a moment, both of them felt an indescribable bitterness in their hearts. He couldn't help but be stunned. Li Chuanbo gulped down the entire pot of wine, feeling as if there was a fire burning in his stomach. He said in a seemingly unintentional manner, "Life and death, victory and defeat, we are all brothers. Ha, second brother, I wonder if we will still be brothers after this drinking session? Xiao Chenyu lowered his head slightly and said softly, "Morning thunder is missing." It was a little gloomy and low. Li Chuanhua's hand trembled. Oh, of course, he knew about Xiao Chenlei and the relationship between Xiao Chenlei and Xiao Chenyu. He was greatly surprised by Xiao Chenlei's disappearance and also felt a trace of shock. No wonder Xiao Chenyu actually came personally. He went missing when he was fighting with the master of the Calamity Sword, Xiao Chenyu said indifferently, but his eyes flashed coldly. Li Chuanhua shook his head, breathing heavily. His emotions were no longer as calm as before. The master of the Calamity Sword is helping the Li clan now. This is already a fact that no one can deny. The truth is the truth. Xiao Chenyu closed his eyes. His voice gradually became fierce as he said word by word, "This feud is absolutely irreconcilable. He helped the Li clan, so I am here to deal with them. If they are defeated and die, the Li clan will have no backing and will be finished as well. Although I am not directly dealing with you, I am still dealing with you." Xiao Chenyu had already made himself very clear. This feud is absolutely irreconcilable. Li Chuanhua fell silent. He lowered his head and didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. "Second brother, let's drink." The two of them remained silent, drinking one cup after another. However, their eyes no longer met each other's. The harmonious atmosphere from before finally had a flaw. It didn't take much time for 13 jugs of wine to be gone just like that. The two mid-stage supreme martial artists didn't use their cultivation to suppress or dissolve the alcohol. At this moment, they were both a little tipsy. Putting aside their powerful cultivation, the two of them were both old men who had lived for more than 10,000 years. Although their bodies were far stronger than ordinary people, their alcohol tolerance might not necessarily be high. Li Wuba held his ring between his fingers. With a shake, 7 to 8 jugs of wine popped out again. "Second brother, this wine is what we used to like to drink the most. It is a genuine stock from 4,000 years ago. This is all I have. Let's just drink all of it today." "Alright, let's drink all of it." Xiao Chenyu agreed readily. The two of them no longer used wine cups to hold the wine, as if they felt that drinking with wine cups was too slow and not refreshing enough. Although they knew that when they finished drinking all of this wine, it would be equivalent to drinking all of their 10,000 years of brotherhood, the two of them still took a jug each and gulped it down. Because the two of them were drinking too fiercely, a lot of the thick wine had already reached their faces. However, the two of them did not care about it at all. They just drank in big mouthfuls, as if drinking was the only thing they could do at the moment. As the wine slid down their faces, their eyes were a little red. The moment they lifted their fourth jug of wine, Li Chuanhua suddenly reached out and pressed down on Xiao Chenyu's jug. "Wait." "What?" Xiao Chenyu narrowed his drunken eyes and said, "Chuanhua, do you have anything else to say?" Li Chuanhua said loudly, "Yes. I have something to say." "Say it." "I'm listening." Xiao Chenyu tilted his head and shouted in a low voice. "There's something that I've been suppressing in my heart for thousands of years. Today, I must get to the bottom of it. If I miss today, I'm afraid this matter won't be seen again." Li Chuanhua's eyes became dangerous. But then, after Big Brother Jun and his family went missing, Big Uncle still had a younger brother. Since he's Big Uncle's younger brother, we naturally have to address him as Uncle. His name is Jun Han. "Second brother, you should still remember him, right?" Xiao Chenyu's eyes narrowed. "Of course I remember. Big Brother's disappearance wasn't done by the two of you. I'm completely sure of this. However, Uncle Jun Han's family didn't go missing. Instead, their entire family was massacred. Who did it? Tell me." Li Chuanhua's eyes were as sharp as lightning as he looked at Xiao Chenyu. Xiao Chenyu frowned but didn't answer. After a long time, he said with difficulty, "I do know the whole story. However, the only thing I can tell you is that I didn't do it." "Of course I know you didn't do it. The two of us were drinking that day. What I want to ask you is, who did it? I didn't say it was you. I've never doubted you either." Li Chuanhua's gaze and tone became aggressive. In the depths of his eyes, there was a hint of sadness. It was only after a few months that I found out about such a huge change. I asked you immediately. At that time, you said you didn't know. You even accompanied me to search for the culprit in the pugilistic world. I believed you because I've never doubted you. But now you're saying that you know the whole story? Second brother, did you just watch as I searched for the culprit in the pugilistic world like a fool? You even accompanied me to search for the culprit. Were you playing a game with an idiot? Xiao Chenyu avoided his gaze. I lied to you back then. Ha! Li Chuanbo burst into laughter. However, the flames in his eyes were extinguishing bit by bit. You're loyal. You're really loyal. The great Xiao Chenyu is actually willing to play a game with an idiot brother. What a good brother. Xiao Chenyu's face suddenly turned red. He was suddenly furious. What do you know? Do you know the powerful relationship between the two of us? If I had told you back then, your Li clan would have been long gone. Long gone. Do you know? Oh, you're afraid of harming the Li clan. I'm really grateful for second brother's deep affection for me. But what about now? Now that you've revealed the truth, aren't you afraid that the Li clan will be gone? Li Chuanbo tilted his head and asked somewhat mockingly. Xiao Chenyu heaved a heavy sigh and said, Brother, this is the last drink of our lives. I know. That's why I have to ask you clearly. Li Chuanbo chuckled. You and I both know very well that our fathers were once one of the tribulations back then. And Big Brother Jun's father is the master of the tribulation sword, Jun Lai. Our fathers all respectfully addressed Uncle Jun Lai as Big Brother. Then, on the same day, their whereabouts became unknown. Uncle's entire family went missing in an even more bizarre manner. Uncle Jun Han was the only one left in the layered heavens with the surname Jun. However, Uncle Jun Han's entire family was massacred and annihilated one night for no reason at all. Li Chuanbo asked. At that time, the major clans had yet to truly form, but, throughout history, there have only been major clans on the continent and no 10 super clans. During that period of time, our fathers had already turned the layered heavens upside down. Other than our own clans, there were no other experts who could threaten Uncle Jun Han anymore. Even if there were still people who had that kind of ability, they definitely wouldn't have the guts to do so. Touching Uncle Jun Han would be equivalent to touching the future most powerful clan at the same time. Killing Uncle Jun Han's entire family would be equivalent to committing suicide, or even having the entire clan buried with them. The only reason I can think of is that you guys were afraid that Uncle Jun Han would also want a share of the loot? So you guys harmed him? Li Chuanbo asked fiercely, Is that so? Tell me, is that so? Xiao Chenyu didn't reply for a long time. However, he finally replied, Yes. That was what they thought back then. Why would they still want to give away a piece of the existing territory of the major clans, and even possibly the best and most fertile piece of land? Therefore, Yi Qinshan, Lan Buhui, Chen Yingfeng, Shi Baoxiao and Zhuge Zangqiong joined forces. Zhuge Zangqiong came up with a plan. Yi Qinshan poisoned them and they attacked the Jun family together to wipe them out. They had asked me about this matter before. I didn't participate, but I didn't stop them either. However, for some reason, Ling Muyang found out about this matter. Ling Muyang personally took action in disguise and eventually rescued Uncle Jun Han's 5-year-old child, Jun Wei. From then on, Ling Muyang became the target of public criticism. Chapter 1488. The drinking at the Ling clan that time was actually to resolve this matter and resolve the grudges. The fight between Lan Buhui and Chen Yingfeng in your memory was just an excuse to force Ling Muyang to make a stand. However, Ling Muyang chased everyone out, and from then on, the brothers became strangers. Xiao Chenyu said, in reality, the real break between the big clans was at that time. No wonder. No wonder. Li Chuanbo muttered to himself, smiling bitterly. Suddenly, he raised his head and gulped down the strong liquor. Wiping his mouth, he asked fiercely, Have you ever thought? How can you live up to the brotherhood of our fathers by making such a choice? How can you live up to Big Uncle? How can you? Xiao Chenyu said dispassionately. At that time, the situation in the continent was already clear. A huge piece of land was placed in front of us, waiting to be divided. In front of such huge benefits, who would still be in the mood to consider friendship? In front of huge benefits, everything else is not important. Fuck you. Li Chuanbo cursed in grief and indignation. Halfway through, he retracted it, his face flushed red from holding it in. Don't scold me. Xiao Chenyu said, I didn't participate in it. From the beginning to the end, I didn't participate in it. But you didn't stop it either. Li Chuanbo said loudly, what happened after that? There was anger in Xiao Chenyu's eyes. He said, after that, Ling Muyang was forced by everyone and finally couldn't take the pressure. After delaying it for several decades, he said that Junwei was dead. However, that wasn't the case. Although Junwei was young then, he already remembered everything. After he grew up, he left the Ling clan and wandered the martial world, changing his name to Endless Hatred. However, for some reason, someone found out about his true identity. He was besieged and eventually went missing, Xiao Chenyu said slowly. Li Chuanbo struck out with his palm furiously. Next to him, a mountain several thousand feet away shattered with a loud bang. Shattered rocks instantly soared into the air within a radius of 10,000 feet, and the sky and earth changed color. Li Chuanbo said fiercely, is this the waning flower lust and endless demon hatred from back then? If you want to kill him, just kill him. Why do you want to give him such a dirty accusation? He's not a lecher, he never was. Xiao Chenyu corrected him. That's just a method. The history books have always been written by the victors. Therefore he is one. What you've done. You guys are really something. Li Chuanbo gritted his teeth. You guys are really so open and aboveboard. If first uncle knew that he had a bunch of flawless juniors like you, how gratified would he be? That's right, first uncle. This sentence was clearly sarcastic. However, Xiao Chenyu did not refute him. History books were history books and facts were facts. Later on, as long as someone with the surname Jun appeared in the Jianghu, you would hunt them down. Is this also the reason? Don't say the word I. Xiao Chenyu said, no one with the surname Xiao was involved in this matter. But that Xiao guy knew about this matter from start to finish. Li Chuanbo said sternly, and he pretended to be deaf and mute all along. Xiao Chenyu didn't say anything. After a long time he said, Junwei didn't die. Because many years after the event, his descendants still appeared in the Jianghu. And these people, without exception, were hunted down by several big clans. Ling Muyang didn't say anything when he came to me. He kowtowed to me 3 times, turned around, and left. Starting from those 3 heads, I started to secretly deploy people to protect Uncle Jun's bloodline and joined forces with Ling Muyang. This was done by me. Later on, more and more time passed. The hunt also gradually died down. And Uncle Jun's descendants were sent to the upper 3 heavens by Ling Muyang. The matter ended there. Since that's the case, why didn't you guys make a move on Jun Shizhu, the leader of the dark bamboo in the upper 3 heavens? Isn't her surname also Jun? Li Chuanbo smiled somewhat mockingly. Because Ning Tianya interfered. Ning Tianya came out of seclusion at that time and protected the bloodline of the Jun family. And they couldn't be sure that she was a descendant of the Jun family. They might as well do Ning Tianya a favor. Also, there was no longer anyone with the surname Jun in the upper 3 heavens, so there was no need to worry about the threat. Xiao Chenyu said indifferently, the most important point was that the big clans at that time were already unshakable. I understand. There was disappointment in Li Chuanbo's tone. He didn't even bother to hide the disheartened look on his face as he said, I really understand now. I understand now. No matter how deep the friendship is, it can't stop the interests. Li Chuanbo said sadly, for you guys, friendship and whatnot are not important. Xiao Chenyu grabbed a drumstick and took a bite. He said, Chuanbo, can we not talk about this anymore? Li Chuanbo said dejectedly, please believe me, I don't want to talk about it even more. I just want to know why. Our fathers were all friends who went through life and death together. Why is it that when it comes to our generation, it has to be so heartless? Xiao Chenyu was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Our fathers went through fire and water together. Their relationship was a life and death trust. That's true. Therefore, they will never let each other down. When it came to our generation, firstly, our fathers went missing too early, so the impact on us wasn't deep enough. Secondly, we didn't go through life and death together at all. We didn't have so many shared thrilling experiences, so there was no so-called true love. At the very most, we were just a bunch of rich kids playing together at that time. We were just childhood playmates. That's all. When we started our own businesses, of course, we had to work hard, go on adventures, and go through all kinds of hardships and dangers. But at that time, we were the leaders. Each of us had a group of subordinates like that. Even if we went through life and death, it was with those people. There was very little between us. It's very normal that our relationship couldn't stand the test. It's also very normal that we waver when faced with interests. Xiao Chenyu said, "If only by killing Uncle Juanhan's family can one have confidence, then it's not strange that they did it." Li Chuanbo smiled rather sorrowfully. "So after killing one's own uncle, one will have confidence." Xiao Chenyu smiled strangely and said, "Chuanbo, if that's the case, one of the tribulations this time is from the Li clan. You also feel confident now, right?" Li Chuanbo suddenly looked up. "Second brother, what do you mean?" Xiao Chenyu said solemnly, "Based on historical experience, once we get through this tribulation, there will be real hope for the Li clan. I sincerely hope that you can get through it." "Sincerely?" Li Chuanbo smiled self-deprecatingly. "I see." Xiao Chenyu said indifferently, "Brother, when you speak in the future, don't put yourself in the position of a saint. Those who laugh at others may not necessarily not be laughable." Li Chuanbo laughed so hard that tears came out of his eyes. Xiao Chenyu, on the other hand, maintained a smile, looking unusually dignified and solemn. All the topics had been discussed, and the mystery that had been there for 10,000 years was solved. That Xiao Chenyu who stood above everyone and was at the peak of supreme martial artist was back. Li Chuanbo laughed maniacally while Xiao Chenyu smiled. Both of them were sighing inwardly, but that hint of warmth in their eyes was gradually fading away. In fact, both of them knew very well that with the revelation of what had happened back then, and with these last few sentences, the friendship of 10,000 years was gone just like that. From now on, it was either you die or I die. Either you die or I die. You and I are no longer brothers. So what if we are brothers? We will still kill each other. That's all. Xiao Chenyu's action of going up north was a clear indication of his attitude. Today's final gathering was to put an end to their lifelong friendship. But in the end, the two of them still didn't go their separate ways. They had been brothers for 10,000 years, and their enmity had been entangled to this day. A glass of wine before the battle of life and death, and before the drinking session ended, they had already broken up. Li Chuanbo didn't explain further to Xiao Chenyu. If Xiao Chenyu had said this an hour ago, Li Chuanbo would definitely have tried his best to explain and express his feelings. But now, it was unnecessary, and completely meaningless. You said that I did it for tribulation, but do you know that before this battle, I was already completely disappointed in my own clan? Do you know that throughout the entire battle, I had never made a move? Do you know that for all of you, for our brotherhood from 10,000 years ago, as long as you were willing to discuss with me, I would rather disband the Li clan in exchange for peace? To me, benefits are not important. Do you know that I have long wanted to give up? What I value the most are my brothers. Li Chuanbo's lips curled into a bitter smile, but he didn't say a single word. I'm not standing in the position of a saint. I'm just standing in the position of a human. That's all. That's all. Holding the wine jar, Li Chuanbo suddenly felt that the once intoxicating wine was no longer easy to swallow. He said softly, "Second brother, we're brothers after all. Let's just talk openly. From today onwards, we'll be strangers and enemies of life and death. Since second brother has come to the Northwest personally, it means that everything is a foregone conclusion. In that case, I can only try my best to deal with second brother." Xiao Chenyu nodded deeply. "That's what you should do. For the sake of the clan's survival, you should do this. It's the same for both of us. Li Chuanbo shook his head lightly. It's different. Before second brother came, I've never interfered, not even once. Xiao Chenyu was stunned. He raised his head abruptly and looked at this brother of his in the past with unusual surprise, as if he found it hard to believe his brother's words. Li Chuanbo turned his face away slightly and nodded lightly. Xiao Chenyu stood up slowly. With his hands behind his back, he took a few steps forward and came to the edge of the cliff. Looking up at the snowy sky, he asked solemnly, "How many times has the Northwest changed hands in the past 100,000 years?" Li Chuanbo also stood beside him with his hands behind his back. He said dispassionately, "Through the vicissitudes of life, the Southeast has always been surnamed Shao?" Two questions, tit for tat, neither giving in. Neither of them spoke anymore. They just stood side by side like that. Heavy snow drifted down, covering the sun and the sky. It didn't take long for a thick layer of snow to cover the two of them. Given their cultivation, before the snowflakes could even come into contact with them, they would have long turned into nothingness. However, at this moment, it was as if they were attached to two wooden or stone statues. It was as if there were two more lifelike snowmen in this place. Chapter 1489. Following the disappearance of the first snowman, the second one also disappeared. Li Chuanbo's body moved slightly, and he coughed lightly. Then he exhaled forcefully, and an extremely strong smell of alcohol shot out from his mouth like an arrow. It pierced through the falling snow, and with a whistling sound, it directly pierced into the stone wall of the mountain peak opposite. With a boom, a completely connected hole actually appeared on the mountain peak opposite. The force of exhalation. Li Chuanbo looked at this hole but didn't open his mouth to reply. "Take care. This is real." Xiao Chenyu also looked at this hole. His gaze was somewhat solemn. Then he floated up, but his movement speed wasn't very fast. It was as if he was very reluctant to leave this place, as if it would be good to stay a little longer. "Take care. This is also real." Li Chuanbo floated away in the opposite direction. His speed was also not fast. The two of them, one on the left and one on the right, also left at an extremely slow speed. However, neither of them turned back. After this separation, the next time they met, it would be a battle of life and death. No matter how slow their speed was, they still went their separate ways. In an instant, their figures gradually disappeared in the vast snowstorm. On the ground, there was still an unopened jar of 1,000-year-old good wine left quietly in this world of ice and snow, leaving behind a witness for this brotherhood's gathering. In this solemn and silent place, a gentle force suddenly came from the direction that Xiao Chenyu had gone. It circled around on the ground and wrapped around the jar of wine, as if it wanted to keep the wine. At the same time, a gentle force also came from the direction that Li Chuanbo had gone. It also wrapped around the jar of wine, as if it also wanted to keep the wine. Once the two forces came into contact, the owners of both sides instantly understood each other's intentions. The two of them stopped at the same time, as if they wanted to leave the wine to each other and give up. However, their actions were unbelievably coincidental. They were actually exactly the same. The two forces retracted at the same time, and the wine jars that had been suspended in the air suddenly lost their support and fell together. With a few thuds, the wine jars fell and shattered into pieces. In the wine jars, the semi-solid dark red wine splashed all over the place. Not a single drop remained. The original intention of both of them was to preserve a few jars of wine. However, the consequence of both of them stopping at the same time was that these jars of wine were destroyed in the end. Two directions. Two people. At the same time, they stopped and heaved a long sigh toward the sky. Both of them were equally disappointed. He stood there for a long time. The fragrance of the wine wafted in all directions, but in the end, it became tasteless. The wine was like blood on the snowy ground. It gradually seeped into the snow, leaving only a patch of red. The last witness of the Brotherhood's gathering was gone. Whether it was man-made or heaven's will, who could tell the difference? Both of them felt a tearing pain in their hearts. In the end, there was nothing left. At this moment, the same thought appeared in both of their minds. However, the two of them still did not turn around. After a long time, Xiao Chenyu let out a long sigh and soared into the sky. His movement technique instantly accelerated, and he completely disappeared into the snowstorm. On the other side, Li Chuanbo stopped in his tracks. He stood there quietly for a few moments, as if he wanted to turn around but ultimately didn't. Gently shaking his head, 2 drops of crystal-clear tears fell onto the snowy ground. Suddenly, he raised his head and laughed loudly towards the sky. Ha! Ha! Li Chuanbo howled into the sky. Everything is empty. There was nothing. The things that I have persevered for 10,000 years have been abandoned 10,000 years ago. Everything is like a fart. Bullshit. Not even worth a fart. He let out a roar as if he was venting. Taking a breath that sounded like crying and sighing, he finally left without a care. Along the way, his mournful laughter shook the heavens and the earth. The mountains and valleys reverberated together, revealing an incomparable determination. Xiao Chenyu, who was in the midst of flying, suddenly stopped. He turned around with a gloomy expression. Hearing that infinitely familiar yet somewhat unfamiliar mournful laughter gradually going further and further away, he was stunned and speechless. After a long time, he let out a long sigh and flew away. The two of them were like 2 advancing straight lines. Finally, they no longer intersected and disappeared from the world. Both of them understood. Once we part today, we will meet again in the future. You must take care of yourself and not be caught in a dilemma. The battle between the allied forces and the Li clan had now reached the most critical moment. Even Chu Yang, who had been watching coldly from the sidelines, could clearly feel this kind of pressure. It was as if a mountain was collapsing down on him. On the allied forces' side, other than the reinforcements from the Ling clan and the law enforcement officers who had yet to arrive, the reinforcements from the other clans had all arrived. Their momentum had more than doubled compared to before. More importantly, Diwu Qingro was slowly consolidating and reorganizing the allied forces. This could be seen. The final battle was right before their eyes. During this period of continuous battles, Li Xiongtu had been fighting side by side with Li Ju and Li Batian. Every battle, he was riddled with injuries. Every time, he escaped death by the skin of his teeth. Mo Tianji didn't care about this at all. He was only responsible for treating his injuries and giving him medicine. As for other things, he didn't care at all. Li Xiongtu's expression became uglier and uglier. His eyes also became more and more gloomy. It was fine if it happened once or twice, but almost every time, he would encounter some unexpected situation. That wasn't an accident anymore. However, Li Xiongtu had no way to deal with this. Mo Tianji and the rest didn't care about him at all. They even treated him and helped him recover. Li Wubua and the rest didn't have any opinions about this. They only looked on coldly. Li Ju, Li Batian and the rest became more and more unscrupulous. In the end, they even brazenly and unscrupulously set up traps for Li Xiongtu. When the army retreated, there would always be people who would intentionally or unintentionally push the injured Li Xiongtu so that he would fall behind and become the one who covered the rear. When they charged and broke through the enemy lines together, Li Xiongtu would often suddenly realize that he was all alone. Thousands of soldiers were all his enemies. Everyone else was sincerely cooperating and helping each other. Only he was facing a circle of enemies alone. At least a circle of enemies. Everyone was bathed in blood and killing. Their eyes and ears were alert, but their companions didn't even look at him from the corner of their eyes. It was as if he was invisible. If not for the fact that Li Xiongtu's foundation was solid, his cultivation was strong, his ability to resist attacks and his ability to resist injuries was outstanding. Then he would have died at least 30 to 40 times by now. Li Xiongtu's heart slowly turned cold. He wasn't stupid. Why? He finally couldn't help but ask Mo Tianji. He could only ask Mo Tianji. Perhaps he could get an answer because Mo Tianji disdained to lie to him. Asking others would only bring shame to himself. But there's no why. Isn't the reason right there on the table? Mo Tianji said, because you have already lost your value to be used. Now, it's time for you to repay them. No matter what method you use to repay them. It's all right. It's not overboard. It's not overboard at all. Li Xiongtu said angrily, but I should be the one to repay them. It's only repaying them if I'm willing. Is framing me like this also repaying them? Mo Tianji said disdainfully, of course it's repaying them. Willing? You can only say that you're too naive if you can say such things. Every time Meng Huanhuan saw the wounds all over Li Xiongtu's body, she would cry. More than once, she would kneel on the ground and beg Li Xiongtu to stop fighting. Since you already know that they're using you and even harming you, why are you still fighting? Why are you still so stupid to go out and risk your life? While Meng Huanhuan was persuading him, Mo Tianji, Ao Shiyun, and Rui Butong were watching coldly from the sidelines. Ao Shiyun and Rui Butong couldn't help but want to rush out a few times. However, they were always stopped by Mo Tianji. Because of this, the two of them didn't speak to Mo Tianji for a few days. I've never seen someone as ruthless as you. You're such a hero. Not only are you indifferent to being framed by others, you're even adding fuel to the fire. Adding insult to injury? Mo Tianji was also watching. He was watching Li Xiongtu. What kind of choice would he make under such a blow? Mo Tianji was really looking forward to Li Xiongtu's choice. I want to fight. I want to continue fighting. Li Xiongtu said lightly. I know that they're harming me. I already know why they saved me in the beginning. As for what they're thinking now, I also know. I know that only death awaits me if I stay here. Li Xiongtu said with anger and heartache, but they've saved my life. They've given me too many resources and treated me as their hope. No matter what their intentions were, no matter what their intentions were, no matter what their intentions were. I'm indebted to them. That's it. No matter how despicable they are, no matter what their motives are, it's a fact that I'm indebted to them. I have to repay them no matter what. I want to fight 100 battles for the Li clan. I've fought 17 times now. I'm still 33 times away. It's my fate to die in battle. It's my fortune to survive. I'm not fighting for the Li clan. I'm fighting for myself. I'm fighting for my heart. Li Xiongtu raised his head. I won't feel guilty for my path to the top. I won't destroy myself on the path to the top. Mo Tianji heaved a deep sigh as well. He didn't know if this sigh was filled with relief, appreciation, or something else. Li Xiongtu's choice was completely within his expectations. It was the same for the shock he felt. Li Xiongtu's temper had always been like this. Mo Tianji understood it completely and even admired it. However, this didn't mean that Mo Tianji was recognized by others. On the contrary, Mo Tianji didn't want Li Xiongtu to be flexible. The other side wants to exterminate you. They've used all kinds of schemes. They've almost killed you in front of you. But you still want to fight for them 100 times to repay their kindness. How depressing was such a thought? Someone as wise as Mo Tianji could understand such thoughts, but he couldn't agree with them. Should he say that Li Xiongtu was honest, or was he stupid and ignorant? Mo Tianji didn't know what to say. He wanted to ruthlessly despise Li Xiongtu's day. He wanted to despise this man's stubborn way of thinking. However, thinking about it was one thing, and disagreeing with it was another. But he realized that he couldn't despise Li Xiongtu even if he wanted to. In fact, he even had some admiration, and even respect for him. I want to explode, but I can't. I have to plan properly. I'll start writing the final battle tomorrow. Chapter 1490. The reward of 100 battles is too much. Mo Tianji sighed. Li Xiongtu, you can't afford this reward. Don't blame me for not reminding you that the enemy's reinforcements have almost all arrived. The next battle will only be more brutal. The next battle will be led by an 8th or 8th grade supreme martial artist. The final battle between the two sides is about to begin. When the time comes, with your cultivation, you won't be able to help at all. Even the aftermath will be enough to destroy you. Do you think your so-called contribution is meaningful? So far, you have already fought for the Li family 17 times. According to your calculation, you still have to fight for another 33 times before you can be considered to have repaid your debt. However, not to mention 33 times, at most, after this big battle, you will have to fight for the Li family in Book 7, Part 780 at most. It's time for the final battle between the two sides. Mo Tianji said, "How are you going to complete your 100 battles?" Li Xiongtu said indifferently, "To be honest, I also know that the chances of repaying my debt are slim. But what I want is nothing more than peace of mind and righteousness. That's all." He said indifferently, "I'm not stupid either. How could I not know whether it's worth it or not? But back then, when I was at the end of my road, it was them who helped me. This is a hurdle in my life. I must walk through it in my own way." "I understand." Mo Tianji nodded. Facing such a person, even the master of calculation and manipulation was helpless. "Moreover, I crave battle. I'm passionate about battle. Only through battle can I feel the value of my own existence. Only through continuous battle can my future path be. It belongs to me, belongs to me." Li Xiongtu's eyes shone with a sharp light with a kind of passion. This kind of passion could be felt by everyone. At this moment, Li Xiongtu was almost burning. Everyone had only seen this kind of burning fighting spirit on Dong Wuxiang before. At this moment, if one were to close their eyes, everyone would think that Dong Wuxiang was standing right in front of them. Chapter 780, adding 4 more pawns to the monarch ferocious and domineering. These two people, who didn't look alike at all, actually looked so similar at this moment. When you guys arrived, I had just broken through to the strength of a first-grade martial saint. Li Xiongtu's eyes flashed. I didn't even adjust my breathing to stabilize my realm before I immediately threw myself into a life and death battle. Continuing, the first round was a life and death challenge. Countless times I was on the brink of death, but in the end I survived. I don't know why, but I actually like the feeling of coming back from the jaws of death. That is an experience that I will never be able to achieve through my usual practice. Another 5 battles later, I realized that I had broken through to the second stage of the Supreme Martial Artist realm. Furthermore, it was a direct improvement in battle. What comprehension, what cultivation, none of that mattered. It was a breakthrough in battle. At that time, when I was already at the end of my rope, I suddenly broke through and beheaded the enemy in front of me. When I saw the look of disbelief in the enemy's eyes before he died, I suddenly felt that life was very beautiful. Li Xiongtu said indifferently, "The beauty lies in the enemy's blood." Another 30 battles later, we're still in a situation of certain death. I broke through to the 3rd stage realm once again. Every battle is equivalent to dozens of life and death experiences. The subtle feeling of being on the edge of life and death, where I could lose my life at any time. Also, Li Ju, Li Ba Tian, and everyone in the Li clan were isolating me and hoping that I would die. However, I didn't die. Instead, the more I fought, the more I enjoyed it. To them, being on the edge of life and death is a painful torture. It's a situation that they don't want to face. However, to me, it's a rare opportunity. After 10 battles, I became a 4th stage Supreme Martial Artist. And now, I'm at the peak of the 4th stage Supreme Martial Artist realm. Li Xiongtu laughed. After 100 battles, I will definitely break through to the 5th stage, or even the 6th stage. If they didn't set me up, I would fight. If they set me up, I would still fight. Even if I had to die in battle, I would fight until my last breath, until my last bit of soul was destroyed. Li Xiongtu said proudly, "Since that's the case, why don't I fight until my conscience is at ease? I'll cut off all ties with the clan that hates me to the core and wishes for me to die early, but I'm indebted to them. You're an awesome person. I admire you." Ao Xie Yun and Rui Butong gave him a thumbs up. Mo Tianji said indifferently, "What's the use of admiring me? Li Xiongtu has increased his cultivation by several levels in less than half a year since he started fighting. What about the two of you?" Ao Xie Yun and Rui Butong were dumbfounded. Their faces darkened. Then they spat, "You bastard, how can you compare? Don't you feel guilty saying this?" the two of them couldn't be blamed for scolding him. They even said that Mo Tianji felt guilty. The two of them were currently Mo Tianji's guards. There were very few opportunities for them to go out and kill enemies, let alone someone like Li Xiongtu, who was constantly on the edge of life and death. If even they had to go out and kill enemies, Mo Tianji would probably be in great danger. What's more, the two of them had already climbed to the peak of the first level of Supreme Martial Artist. When a Supreme Martial Artist reached the upper level, there was a gap between the human and the immortal. It was almost as difficult as ascending to the heavens. In such a short period of time since the start of the battle, to be able to rise from the initial level of Supreme Martial Artist to the peak level of Supreme Martial Artist was already quite an achievement. If it were someone else, they would definitely not be able to make this progress without thousands of years. Mo Tianji actually used this to attack the two of them. Wouldn't it make them speechless? Don't you know that everyone needs to rise to the Supreme Martial Artist level as soon as possible? We are racing against time. If you have time to argue with me, why don't you use it to consolidate your own cultivation? Mo Tianji's words made even Li Xiongtu stagger and almost fall to the ground. You make it sound so easy. The supreme grade is just a matter of touching your lips. But, do you know how many talented and brilliant people would be stuck at each of these checkpoints? Mo Tianji fixed his gaze on Li Xiongtu's day. His eyes revealed that he was deep in thought. There was a strange light that was faintly flickering in his eyes. Li Xiongtu was fearless. Even when he faced Chu Yang and Dong Wushang, there was no fear in his heart. But at this moment, when he met Mo Tianji's gaze, he felt chills all over his body. This guy's schemes were really impossible to guard against. He was really unscrupulous. It would be strange if he wasn't afraid. Actually, what Mo Tianji was thinking about had nothing much to do with Li Xiongtu himself. Li Xiongtu had improved so quickly with the help of battle. Then, if he and his brothers also joined the battle and experienced life and death, would they also be able to improve like Li Xiongtu? But after thinking for a while, the flame in his eyes gradually extinguished. This idea is undoubtedly very tempting. But forget it. I can't bear to. Mo Tianji sighed in his heart. He thought silently, although I know that there will definitely be an effect if we do it this way, it's still too risky. At this moment, from the direction of the Li clan's main hall, an earth-shattering cheer suddenly came. It seemed like something big had happened. And it seemed like it was a good thing. Everyone, follow me to the main hall and prepare for the next wave of battle. Mo Tianji stood up and led the way out. Ao Xie Yun and Rui Butong stood up at the same time. Li Xiongtu followed suit. Xiongtu! Meng Huanhuan let out a soft cry of sorrow. Li Xiongtu stood still. Without turning back he said, "Don't worry, I won't die for sure. As long as I don't deliberately seek death, no one in the world can take my life. When I'm done with the Li clan and fulfill my wish, I'll propose to you immediately and we'll leave this place together." After Li Xiongtu finished speaking, he strode away. "I'll wait for you. You must come back." Behind him, Meng Huanhuan nodded her head heavily with tears in her eyes. When Mo Tianji walked into the main hall, he immediately sensed 4 pairs of sharp eyes focusing on his face and body at the same time. His heart skipped a beat. Following the source of the gaze, he raised his head and looked over. On the seat that originally belonged to the Li clan's clan leader, Li Wubua, sat another person. When he sat there, he naturally stood tall and majestic like a mountain. It was as if he had existed since time immemorial. Everything was so natural as if he was looking down on the world like a sovereign. The position of the Li clan's clan leader had always been unshakable. Even the 4th elder and 5th elder had to stand below the clan leader's seat in this main hall to demonstrate the clan leader's absolute authority. However, when this person sat there the moment he came out, everyone felt that it was only natural. This person's eyes were as sharp as lightning. He sized up Mo Tianji from head to toe, as if he wanted to see through this young wise man. Beside him stood another person. His face was almost similar to his. He seemed like a brother but also seemed like a father. That person had a pair of eyes that were full of vicissitudes and had seen through the world. Being stared at by this pair of eyes, Mo Tianji actually felt a little sad. It was as if in such a short period of time, the other party's emotions had already affected him. Behind this person, there was another person standing on each side. At this moment, these two people were also staring at Mo Tianji. However, their eyes were expressionless. The cultivation of these four people was astonishingly high. To Mo Tianji, they were unfathomable and unfathomable. He couldn't see through them. Mo Tianji immediately understood. This must be the appearance of the Li clan's true pinnacle figure. Mo Tianji? Tribulation's think tank? The man asked. I wouldn't dare. Mo Tianji said indifferently, You must be Li Chuanhua, old senior Li? Mo Tianji's guess was right. This person was Li Chuanhua. Li Chuanhua had come in person to take over the Li clan. Only Li Chuanhua could have such power and influence. He was also the only one who could make the clan head give up his position immediately and willingly the moment he came out. Li Chuanhua said indifferently, The Li clan is facing a huge change of life and death right now. A great crisis is already at hand. We have nothing but martial power but no ability to plan. Everything depends on military advisor Mo. This time, I have come out to tell you that you have 4 more pawns under your command. You can use them as you wish. Chapter 1491. Mo Tianji furrowed his brows. His expression was a little serious as he said, Senior's return to the mortal world will naturally be of great help to the current situation. However, may I ask Senior, which clan's Lord Ancestor is involved in this war? Advisor Mo, you live up to your reputation. Just from my appearance, you were able to deduce the situation. To be honest, Shao Chenyu from the Shao clan is ranked second among the great clans. The second strongest among the great ancestors has already entered the battle. Li Chuanhua said calmly. He didn't find Mo Tianji's reaction strange. If Mo Tianji didn't notice this change, or if he didn't ask due to his identity, he would have underestimated Mo Tianji. I see. Mo Tianji didn't find it strange at all. If the other party didn't have such a dangerous character who could change the entire situation, Li Chuanhua's Book 7 Chapter 787, Absolute Power, why would he appear here? Since Li Chuanhua appeared here, it meant that the other party also had an expert of Li Chuanhua's level. This is Li Xiangxi, my son. Li Chuanhua introduced, These two are my brothers as well as my bodyguards. We have been through life and death together for 10,000 years. Li Xiangxi is at the peak of 8th grade Supreme Martial Artist. He is only 1 step away from 2nd grade Supreme Martial Artist. As for these two brothers of mine, they broke through to 2nd grade Supreme Martial Artist 200 years ago. Right now, they are at the beginner level of 2nd grade Supreme Martial Artist full. Li Chuanhua's voice was very calm as he introduced them to Mo Tianji one by one. I, on the other hand, am at the peak of 2nd grade Supreme Martial Artist. I can only be considered as a high-level Supreme Martial Artist full. Mo Tianji's expression changed. He said, With the help of all of you, I believe that our chances in this battle have increased. Li Chuanhua's expression was bleak. He said, The crisis that the Li clan is facing this time is indeed unprecedented. Even during the most dangerous period of the battle back then, it didn't reach such a situation and didn't affect the Li clan. Advisor Mo, you don't have to say anything nice. I more or less know what to do. Without Advisor Mo holding the fort and planning everything, the Li clan would have been annihilated sooner or later. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation The Matter of the Nail. However, even with Advisor Mo holding the fort and strategizing, being able to deal with the enemy. But when it comes to the battle between 7th grade and 3rd grade Supreme Martial Artists, no matter how smart and scheming you are, it will be useless. In front of absolute strength, everything was just empty talk. Therefore, the final outcome of the Li clan is still inevitable and will be destroyed. Li Chuanhua said indifferently. Then he stared at Mo Tianji and asked softly, What do you think, military advisor Mo? Mo Tianji nodded. the chances of winning are indeed very slim. In fact, it's close to none. However, if you want to preserve a trace of your bloodline, it's not absolutely impossible. There should still be hope. Hearing Mo Tianji's words, everyone in the hall let out a long sigh. Everyone already had a common understanding of this outcome. It was a fact, although it was cruel. But no one was surprised. The Li family is located in the northwest, and the geographical environment is not good. If he was in the heart of the continent, he could hide his bloodline anywhere. However, he was in the northwest. But it's not easy. The only way is to charge out. Only by charging out can we have a future. Li Chuanhua said, "This old man has thought of this, military advisor Mo has thought of this as well, and I believe that the Allied forces have also thought of this. Therefore, it's really very difficult to charge out." He paused. His gaze went past Mo Tianji and looked at Ao Shiyun, Rui Badong and Li Xiongtu. He said, "All of you must take good care of yourselves." His tone didn't change at all from the start to the end. However, Li Xiongtu clearly felt that Li Chuanhua's gaze stopped on his face for a moment longer. Mo Tianji's eyes flickered slightly. He could tell that the last few words of this wise old man in front of him were very meaningful. He just wanted the four of them to take good care of themselves? Before he finished speaking, Li Chuanhua stood up and strode down from his seat. Facing everyone, he said solemnly, "I have something to say. Elder Master, please enlighten us." Everyone knelt down in unison. The Li clan is at a critical juncture of life and death. Since we need military advisor Mo to command, then we must confirm military advisor Mo's position. Firstly, if any one of you dares to play any tricks here, I will personally take action and be the first to kill him. Secondly, Li Chuanhua gestured. Military advisor Mo, please take a seat. The direction he was pointing at was the seat of the Li clan head. Then, Li Chuanhua said loudly, "From now on, everyone in the Li clan, including me, must listen to military advisor Mo's commands unconditionally. Anyone who dares to disobey will be killed without mercy." No one had any objections to this decision because it was Li Chuanhua who made this decision. There's one more important thing. Now, select your descendants. Every clan is only allowed to have 2 people. Then, gather them together. Once you find a suitable opportunity, send your descendants out first so that you can make a comeback in the future. Yes. This time, everyone agreed even more readily. There was already no hope of victory. They only hoped that their descendants would have a chance to make a comeback. Li Chuanhua turned around. Military advisor Mo, please. From this moment onwards, even if you sell all of us in the Li clan, we will also listen to you. With me in charge, I believe that no one will dare to have any objections. Mo Tianji nodded and walked forward step by step. Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong followed closely behind him. Li Xiongtu followed him for a few steps, then stopped and stood beside Li Chuanhua. Li Chuanhua's brows furrowed. Mo Tianji finally walked to his seat. Turning around, he slowly sat down. Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong stood behind him, just like 2 door gods. With the situation settled, the people below suddenly felt an unprecedented pressure. It was even more oppressive than when the old clan master, Li Chuanhua, was still in power. It was as if the entire Li clan was in his hands the moment Mo Tianji sat down here. Absolute power. In the hands of an outsider. But no one was unconvinced. Mo Tianji's abilities had long conquered them. Only Mo Tianji smiled bitterly in his heart. He didn't expect that he couldn't get rid of this hot potato in the end. A veteran was indeed a veteran. An old monster who had lived for more than 10,000 years. He was a real character. A human-shaped monster. The moment Li Chuanhua appeared, he cut the Gordian knot and established Mo Tianji's position with the highest authority. He had the demeanor of a clan head who didn't need to use people he doubted. This gesture could be said to be extremely beautiful. In fact, Mo Tianji could clearly feel that this wasn't just for show. Indeed, he was sincere. It looked like Li Chuanhua really felt that the Li clan's destruction was imminent. He could even feel that the Li clan's only chance of survival should lie with Mo Tianji. On the surface, this move seemed to be handing over the lives of the entire Li clan to Mo Tianji. It seemed to be a very risky move that could easily lead to the destruction of the Li clan. However, on a deeper level, it was actually a very smart decision. Because Li Chuanbo wasn't Li Wubo. At most, Li Wubo only knew about the legend of the so-called tribulation. But Li Chuanbo knew very well what kind of existence a tribulation was. Just like Mo Tianji in front of him. Even if you didn't trust him, he would still help you come up with plans and strategies to deal with the enemy, causing the Li clan to struggle at death's door. But deep down, he would only treat the Li clan as a war tool. If they were all dead, then so be it. But if you trusted him, he would still do his best. But for this sincere trust, he would make a certain degree of repayment. And what Li Chuanbo needed was this certain degree of repayment, the continuation of the Li clan's bloodline. No matter how many bloodlines there would be in the end, it was fine as long as there was, even if it was just one or two. It was better than having no descendants. Mo Tianji bowed to this wise old man and said, "Elderly, I'll do my best." A smile like spring water flashed across Li Chuanbo's eyes. He nodded lightly. He knew that Mo Tianji's words meant that he had agreed. It was good that he had agreed. There was hope for everything. Mo Tianji's telepathic message rang in his ears. "Elderly, I can only guarantee that if the Li clan doesn't play tricks with me, doesn't engage in internal destruction, and doesn't resort to any outrageous schemes, I will promise to do my best to protect part of the Li clan's bloodline. But if I go against it, the destruction of the Li clan will become a foregone conclusion." Li Chuanbo's face darkened. He replied through telepathy, "If the descendants of the Li clan are really so unfilial, then there's no need for the Li clan to exist anymore. My original intention of establishing the Li clan from a wasteland was to protect the affection in my heart. If the affection is no longer there and has turned into benefits, then there's nothing wrong with destroying it from my hands." "I admire Elder's open-mindedness," Mo Tianji said sincerely. Mo Tianji's words of admiration could be said from the bottom of his heart. For someone like Li Chuanbo, who had established a huge clan that had lasted for tens of thousands of years, to abandon it just like that, if he didn't have the breadth of mind, there was no way he could do it. "I still have a request that I hope you can fulfill." Li Chuanbo said indifferently, "Li Xiongtu must live on. Even if all of the Li clan's bloodline is cut off, Li Xiongtu must live on. This is my final wish." Mo Tianji said solemnly, "Elder can rest assured about this. I didn't want him to die in the first place." Li Chuanbo replied indifferently through telepathy, "Li Xiongtu was never one of the tribulations, right? All of this was actually part of your plan." He said this directly in an affirmative tone. Mo Tianji replied indifferently, "He wasn't. He never was." Li Chuanbo heaved a long sigh of relief. His voice was complicated. As expected, the heavens won't favor the same clan twice. The Li clan was just a chess piece. It was a chess piece from the beginning to the end. However, it's fortunate that Li Xiongtu can live on. Even if he's not a direct descendant, his surname is still Li. Now that things had come to this, even though there was resentment in Li Chuanbo's voice, he didn't say anything about Mo Tianji. There was no need to say anything anymore. Now that things had come to this, even if he went out to clarify things, who would believe him? Even if they did, they wouldn't let the Li clan off. The blood feud of tens of thousands of lives, the precarious situation, benefits that were within reach. Mo Tianji's plan had already succeeded from the moment Li Xiongtu was brought up to the upper three heavens. Chapter 1492. Mo Tianji said, "I can only say that if Li Xiongtu can continue to live, his achievements will be even higher than yours. Maybe even much higher." Li Chuanbo sighed. "It's enough that you can say this. My life's experience in martial arts is all on Li Xiongtu. He can be considered my successor. I have no regrets." Mo Tianji finally understood why Li Xiongtu's cultivation could improve by leaps and bounds in this period of time. So that was the reason. He said, "The people in the Li clan. What does Elder Li plan to do?" Li Chuanbo's gaze swept across the hall. Everyone felt that the elder's gaze was like thunder and lightning, penetrating their hearts. Everyone couldn't help but lower their heads, not daring to look directly at him. Li Chuanbo sighed deeply. Other than a limited number of people and the old, weak, women and children, my Li clan is already full of people who deserve to die. My efforts back then have been squandered away. I didn't get any inheritance. My original intention of establishing the clan was also completely abandoned a few thousand years ago. His voice was even trembling a little. Imayenji, when you reorganize the world order, even though killing is unavoidable, even though human nature is greedy and insatiable, I still hope that you can put loyalty and filial piety in the list of priorities. In that case, Mo Tianji's heart trembled. He raised his head and looked at Li Chuanbo. Li Chuanbo's eyes met his. Those eyes that had seen through the vicissitudes of life were already filled with fatigue and stillness. This world has long made me feel disgusted and disgusted. I don't want to stay in this world anymore, nor do I want to go to the heavenly imperial court. I don't want to see any of my old friends from back then. Until now, the only thing left is to fight to the death. Mo Tianji didn't speak anymore. Li Chuanbo didn't send any more voice transmissions. Everyone, the cruelest war is about to begin. I should have told everyone that I wish everyone good luck and a triumphant return. But now, not only is it meaningless to say those empty words, it's also very irresponsible. Mo Tianji sorted out his emotions. He adjusted his tone and faced everyone present. He said with unusual frankness, "For the sake of the bloodline of our descendants, I want to tell everyone one last truth seriously: be prepared to die." Everyone gathered below had a solemn expression on their faces. Since Senior Li has entrusted me with such an important task today, I, Mo Tianji, can only do my best. However, the enemy is too powerful. The most important thing now is no longer to fight for a temporary victory or defeat with the enemy, but to preserve the Li clan's lineage, hoping for the day when they can make a comeback. We must seize the opportunity to protect the descendants of the bloodline and help them escape. As for the method of cover, there is only one word: sacrifice. Mo Tianji said, "I'll solemnly remind everyone for the last time, each clan is only allowed to have 2 people. It would be best if he was alone. Also, let me give you a word of advice. Don't try to play any tricks anymore. Right now, our bloodline is on the run. Sacrificing the entire clan in exchange for a tiny chance of survival. If any part of our clan has a problem from within, then don't blame me for not reminding you all. Then, the only outcome will be the extermination of our entire clan. I believe that everyone understands this point. Don't try to take millet out of the fire and drag others down with you." It was quiet down there. For a long time, no one spoke. Everyone was trying their best to hold their breaths. For a moment, the hall, which had a radius of 10,000 feet, was densely packed with people. However, there was no sound at all. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Li Wubo stood at one side while Li Ju and Li Batian stood beside him. At this moment, the 3 of them seemed to be deep in thought. However, only they knew what exactly they were thinking about. Now, let's do a head count and divide the battle teams. 8th grade Supreme Martial Artists and above, please step forward, Mo Tianji said calmly. Li Chuanbo took the lead and stepped forward. Immediately after, Li Xiangxi and the others followed suit. Mo Tianji frowned. There should be a total of 11. This means that in the previous battle, 3 8th grade Supreme Martial Artists have already been sacrificed. Among these 8, there are still 2 who are seriously injured and their combat power has been greatly reduced. Excluding Elder Li and the other 3 who have just appeared today, this means that, in the previous battle, we have already lost more than half of our combat power. The terrifying strength of the enemy is evident from this. The enemy's reinforcements are coming from all directions and they are almost inexhaustible. However, here, we have no backup inside and no reinforcements outside. It can be said that one death is one less enemy. Everyone, don't think that the situation will be so optimistic just because Elder Li and the others are here. The expressions of the Li clan members became even more solemn. Next, 7th grade Supreme Martial Artists, please step forward, Mo Tianji said again. Another 17 people took a step forward. 3rd grade Supreme Martial Artists, 25 people. 5th grade Supreme Martial Artists. However, only 10 5th grade Supreme Martial Artists stepped forward. In the recent battles, 5th grade Supreme Martial Artists had already become the leaders of the troops and were the ones who were most likely to lose their lives. 4th grade. There were still 28 4th grade Supreme Martial Artists remaining. Furthermore, they were all injured. Li Xiongtu was among them. 3rd grade to 1st grade. When this order was given, the expressions of the Li clan members became even more terrible. There were only 10 people of 3 grades of Supreme Martial Artists in total. At its peak, the Li clan had a total of 211 Supreme Martial Artist level experts. Li Xiangxi heaved a long sigh. Now, including us, there are only 174 of them. Many of them are also injured and their combat power has been greatly reduced. Supreme Martial Artist experts are formed through the accumulation of tens of thousands of years, countless years and countless resources. Now, within a year, we have lost 117 of them. Furthermore, more than 80 of them have died in the 4 months of battles. This is a testament to how tragic it is. Li Chunbo sighed. This is already a kind of fortune. If not for Mo Tianji's planning behind the scenes in these 4 months, I'm afraid there might not even be many left of these 174 people. The remaining martial saint experts, as long as they are 5th grade and above, step forward, Mo Tianji said again. Those martial saints below 5th grade, step forward. Martial monarch experts, step forward. Those below martial monarch level, all martial emperors and martial kings, step forward and line up outside. Mo Tianji took the lead and walked out. Li Chunbo seemed to know what Mo Tianji was going to do. Together with Li Xiangxi, Li Wubo and a few other elders of the clan, he followed him out. Halfway through, Mo Tianji stopped in his tracks. He didn't turn back. Instead, he looked straight ahead and asked, I want to know, if the Li clan is defeated in the end and all the experts and those who can fight are dead, how will the enemy deal with the remaining women, children and elderly? Li Chunbo's eyes trembled violently. He had no excuse to speak. Beside him, Li Xiangxi sighed and said, the possibility of them being wiped out is infinitely high. Mo Tianji trembled slightly. How many old, weak, sick, disabled women, children are here now? Li Wubo replied, about 730,000 people. This was undoubtedly a rather huge number. It was so huge that everyone was speechless for a moment. Although these people also had a certain level of combat power, compared to the enemy outside, they were worse than babies. Faced with a strong enemy, other than waiting to be killed, there was no room for resistance. Mo Tianji asked calmly, when you invade other clans and expand your territory, how do you deal with the captives or the defeated, especially the women, children and elderly? Don't tell me that the Li clan has never invaded other clans. Or that the Li clan has never taken captives. The underlying meaning of this sentence was very clear. Whatever they did in the past, others would use the same methods to deal with them now. This was how retribution worked in the world. It wasn't that they didn't want to take revenge, it was just that the time hadn't come yet. Li Wubo's mouth was dry. For a moment, he couldn't say anything. He wasn't the only one. All the members of the Li clan present fell into silence. The entire place was silent. Many of them lowered their heads deeply. Li Chunbo was furious. He slapped Li Wubo's face hard and growled, what exactly will they do? Say it. Are you mute? Li Wubo's cheeks puffed up high. His lips trembled a little before he said, kill all the men. Kill all the boys. Women. Those old, ugly, crippled ones, kill all of them too. Those who are slightly more attractive, will be. Li Chunbo's face was pale. His body actually swayed a little. He hadn't been involved in worldly affairs for too many years. Although he knew that the Li clan was probably in a very bad state, he didn't expect it to reach such a stage even in his dreams. Li Chunbo had always governed the Li clan with benevolence and filial piety. Friendship and righteousness were passed down from generation to generation. He had always had a clear conscience and felt that his heart was boundlessly open and just. However, once his grandson gained power, he didn't even spare the women and children on the opposing side who were completely defenseless. The old man gritted his teeth hatefully and delivered another palm strike. With a loud smack, Li Wubo was sent flying several feet away. He crashed heavily onto a pillar and bounced back. Stepping on Li Wubo's chest with one foot, he asked fiercely, "Go on, how do you deal with those who are slightly more attractive? Tell me quickly." How could the old man not know this in his heart? But at this moment, he wanted Li Wubo to tell him personally. Despicable. Bestow meritorious subjects as servants, or sell them off. Li Wubo spat out a mouthful of blood. With great difficulty, he said, "Elder Master, don't think that we are the only ones who have done this. In fact, all the big clans are like this. This is the current Jianghu. Justice doesn't lie in the hearts of the people. It lies in strength." Li Chuanbo lifted his leg in a daze. This is the current Jianghu fashion? Whoever he looked at would nod silently and then turn their face away. Being in the Jianghu, he had seen and done too many such things. Didn't everyone present have thousands or tens of thousands of lives? And how many innocent people were among these lives? Justice doesn't lie in the hearts of the people. It lies in strength. If we are defeated in the end, our family members will also be treated the same way when they fall into the hands of the other party. Chapter 1493. Li Chuanbo was stunned for a long time. Then, he said bitterly, "Since I've wielded the butcher's knife, how can I avoid being the fish on the chopping board?" Everyone was speechless at the same time. An elder with a white beard said to Li Chuanbo in a low voice, "Military Advisor Mo. Military Advisor Mo has only thought of this in advance. After all, the descendants of the great clans all have their own inheritances. Everyone is worried that once their wings are fully grown, they will become a threat in the future. Therefore, they are basically eliminating the weeds by the roots now." Li Chuanbo stood there dumbfounded. Suddenly, he let out a bitter laugh. "Perhaps, these people who are also from great clans like us might be lenient towards the women and children." Another person said somewhat unconfidently. Li Chuanbo smiled coldly and said angrily, "Childish." The others also sighed in their hearts. It was precisely because they were all from great clans that they understood the horror of letting the women and children of the Li clan live. Therefore, they would not let them go. "I want to ask you, if by any chance it really comes to that, what should these people do?" Mo Tianji asked. Everyone's heart was shaken. Everyone present understood why Mo Tianji would ask such a question. However, no one wanted to answer this question because the answer was. Li Chuanbo closed his eyes suddenly and said, "Die." The grandchildren of the Li clan would rather die than be humiliated and tarnished by the enemy. Since ancient times, the hardest thing is death. But so what if we die? Li Chuanbo's words were as stiff as iron and stone, so cold that there wasn't a single trace of emotion in them. As these resolute and decisive words were spoken, the faces of everyone who heard them turned ghastly pale. There was no longer any trace of blood in them. It was one thing to understand in their hearts, but they still hoped that there would be a chance for a turn of events. It was a kind of almost childish and naive extravagant hope. Now that it was said out loud by the highest leader of the clan, it was a completely different concept. Martial artists below monarch level basically had no meaning in such a battle. Almost no one stepped onto the battlefield. Instead, they became the most well-preserved part of the Li clan. There were a total of 120,000 people. They were indeed one of the largest clans in the upper three heavens. With such a team of experts, if they were in the upper three heavens, they could definitely do whatever they wanted. No one would dare to disobey their orders. But here, at this moment, their position was so awkward that everyone was unable to show their faces. Everyone below the monarch rank, you only have one mission now. It's to protect women and children. Mo Tianji stood on the high platform. Looking at the more than 100,000 people in front of him, he said loudly, "You don't need to participate in the following battles. What you need to do is to stay with all the women, children, and the elderly. Don't make any strange movements. Let me tell you one last thing. You must remember and carry it out. There was no sound from below. At this moment, everyone's gaze was focused on Mo Tianji. If there really comes a day, the Li clan was gone. If the other party disdains or cannot bear to kill you and the women and children, then, no matter how wronged you are, you must live on with determination. Just live on like that. Mo Tianji had just said this when Li Chuanbo suddenly stepped forward and stood in front of Mo Tianji. In a low voice, he said, "Boys, I am Li Chuanbo, the founder of the Li clan. Now, the Li clan is in a life and death crisis. I ask you to do one thing. You must remember, you must do it." The 120,000 people below looked at him with fervent gazes. The founder of the Li clan. Li Chuanbo choked when he said the first part of his speech. After a long while, he said loudly, "You must remember Mo Tianji's words. If they don't kill you, then you must work hard to live on. From now on, change your name and live a stable life. Don't force yourself to take revenge for the Li clan." When he said this, his voice paused again. It was as if there was a big mouthful of phlegm in his throat that he couldn't spit out. He panted like a bellows for a while. Suddenly, he roared fiercely, "But you must remember one thing. If they want to kill you, kill the women and children, and rape them, then you must remember that the first thing you must do is not to fight or kill the enemy, but to kill your own people." He would kill all the beautiful women in his clan at the first possible moment. Kill all the women and children who are powerless to resist. Kill them all. The Li clan can accept failure. We can accept the fate of destruction, but the Li clan will never accept humiliation. Li Chuanbo's words echoed in the entire Li clan for a long time. Everyone, including those who were here and those who weren't, heard it. After a moment of silence, hundreds of thousands of people suddenly roared together, "The Li clan can accept failure. We can accept the fate of destruction, but the Li clan will never accept humiliation." Good. These are the good men of the Li clan. Li Chuanbo laughed loudly, tears streaming down his face. That's how it is. When the time comes, kill your own women first and then fight the enemy with your life. Even if you can lose a strand of hair, it's still a victory and a gain. Yes. The eyes of the 120,000 people turned red at the same time. They controlled themselves to not let their tears fall as they roared with all their might. In a while, gather all the women and children together. You will be in charge of watching over them. Li Chuanbo's gaze was as sharp as an arrow. If anyone dares to have any other thoughts, then? A cold glint flashed in his eyes. Everyone felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave. "Elder Master, please rest assured." A tragic atmosphere spread in the area. Mo Tianji looked at the scene in front of him with a deep gaze, his heart twitching. "I can save these innocent people? Can I? What can I do?" The 120,000 martial artists below the monarch level gradually dispersed. Those standing in front of Mo Tianji at this moment were all experts above the monarch level and below the 5th grade of the martial saint level. There were a total of 8,400 people. There was still complete silence. "The mission you have to complete this time is a little cruel." Mo Tianji said, "You are in the battle plan, but I'm sure everyone knows how difficult it is to cause effective harm to the enemy with your cultivation." Anger and indignation were written all over the faces of the over 8,000 people here. However, deep down, they knew that this was the truth and there was nothing they could do. The decisive battle was imminent, but these people were not strong enough to be of use and could not form an effective battle force. "Everyone, there is no need to be so dejected. You still have the chance to cripple the enemy, kill the enemy, and even annihilate the enemy. Now, let me tell you an effective way to harm the enemy." Mo Tianji closed his eyes and said, "Your mission is to charge directly into the enemy's dense group at the beginning of the battle. If you can't charge in, you will die. There is no other way. However, once you charge in, don't think about using your hands, swords, palms, or fists to kill the enemy. You only need to do one thing. Immediately explode your cultivation." Mo Tianji's voice was extremely cold at this moment. He said coldly, To put it bluntly, you are transforming into over 8,000 people. Do your best to cause as much damage to the enemy as possible. Because your cultivation is lower, this is the only effective way to kill the enemy. The greater the damage you can cause to the enemy, the higher the chance of keeping our high-end forces. Your children will be able to keep their lives, escape, and survive. In other words, you are using your lives to fight for a chance of survival for your descendants. That is all. For the inheritance of the bloodline. Even if you are cold-blooded, you have to do this. You have to understand one thing, a very important thing. The reason for this arrangement is not because the high-end supreme martial artists are afraid of death. Their endings are no different from yours. They are all going to die. It is just a matter of time. However, before they die, they have to open up a path for safe retreat at all costs. Since they are going to die sooner or later, then death is the biggest price to pay. What you are doing is actually the same. After disbanding, everyone is to return home immediately. Within 10 days, try to reunite with your family as much as possible. These are the last few days. After 10 days, it will be the time of the final battle. Emotianji closed his eyes and said, I will not force you. After 10 days, if anyone is not willing to participate in this life or death mission, you can stay at home. There is no need to return here. I guarantee in the name of my big brother, Tribulation Swordmaster, that I will not do anything to you because of this. If the Li clan does anything to hurt you because you don't die, I will leave the Li clan immediately. This is my promise to you. Life or death, it is up to you to decide. Emotianji waved his hand calmly. Now listen to my orders. Disband. Go home. More than 8,000 secondary experts scattered in all directions with a loud boom. They seized the last bit of time to reunite with their families. After that, it would be their final farewell. Li Ju grumbled anxiously at the side. Brother, this promise is a little inappropriate, isn't it? If by then, none of these people come, then how? Before he could finish, he was sent flying by a slap from Li Chuanbo. Li Chuanbo scolded him bitterly and hatefully, You useless thing! What a good-for-nothing! Despicable and shameless trash! How can I, Li Chuanbo, have descendants like you? You have completely disgraced me. Li Chuanbo looked up at the sky and sighed. Ao Shiyun, Rui Barong and Li Xiongtu looked at Li Ju with eyes full of disdain. This guy, even at this point in time, was still thinking about this. After that, it was time to arrange for all the experts above 5th grade martial saint. Including all the supreme martial artists, there were a total of 1,000 people. Mo Tianji began to divide the teams. 8th grade supreme martial artists and above will each lead a team. In each team, there will be 2 7th grade supreme martial artists and 3 8th grade supreme martial artists. 10 5th grade supreme martial artists will be divided into 5 teams. 4th grade supreme martial artists, 3 in each team. Counting down, all the members will be distributed according to the average number. All the remaining members will be included in the team led by Elder Li Chuanbo. In this way, each team will have a maximum of 240 people, making a total of 1,200 people. The remaining 40 people will be included in Elder Li Chuanbo's team. When the time comes, all 8 teams will be under the command of the command. The grand strategy will be decided like this. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.